Hey everyone, I'm Nemo. I'm joined here by Levon Aronian, Super Grandmaster and current world number 15, also winner of the most recent Freestyle Chess Grand Slam. How does it feel to be coming off of such an important win and entering Esports World Cup like this?
Oh, amazing. I have a rush of adrenaline and I am ready to fight.
Levon, you're going to be fighting over this board, but blindfolded. So pick your blindfold. I'll ask you some more questions as we go. This is 3+2. Just let me know your moves. I'll make it for you.
Okay, perfect.
How many moves do you think you'll beat me in?
Last time I actually tried, it was very difficult because although we play with increments. So
Yeah, it's increment. Yeah. All right, well, good luck. I'll start
Thank
my
you.
clock. E4.
C5.
C5. Knight to F3.
Knight C6.
Knight C6. D4.
C takes.
C takes D4. Knight takes D4.
Knight F6.
6. Knight to C3.
D6.
D6. Okay. Bishop to G5.
E6.
E6. Is it different playing chess now that you're part of an esports club?
Yeah, life has changed. I mean, every day I wake up with joy in my life. Finally.
I love hearing that.
Finally, there is purpose in my life.
All right, queen to D2.
No, I really enjoy playing with the team, of course. A6.
A6. Do you have camaraderie with the other people in your team?
I mean, we had the dinner at the Armenian restaurant that is inside this hotel.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
F3. I have no idea what is going on anymore.
F3 you played, okay. Bishop E7.
Bishop E7. So it sounds like you've been hanging out a little bit with your team.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, long castles.
Queen C7.
Queen C7. Have you prepared any specific strategy for this event in particular?
Playing fast helps.
King B1. Playing fast. It is 10 minutes, so that makes sense.
B5.
B5. Somehow you're playing faster than me in this game as well. If you had to give yourself a percentage to win, what would you give yourself? H4.
99%.
99% to win? Team reject right now.
No, I
like,
mean
yes.
in this particular game, you mean? Or...
No, for the much more important.
No, 50%.
50%?
It's 50% I win or 50% I won. Okay, so
That's
when
good.
H4.
Yes.
Let's go H5.
Do you have any particular player that you're trying to beat? Like you have to beat them, no matter what.
I have to beat Anish
Anish?
because he beat me in qualifier. So
Right.
now it's time for revenge.
That's a good one. Anish, Levon's coming for you. I'm gonna play knight takes c6.
Yeah. Queen takes.
Queen takes c6. I'll play knight to e2.
Okay. Bishop d7.
Bishop d7.
Right.
Not b. d7.
No, d7.
d7. Okay.
Dimitri.
Dimitri. Okay. Knight to d4.
Queen to c7.
Bishop to d3.
Rook to b8.
Rook to b8. Is this your first time in Saudi Arabia?
Second.
Second.
I've been here in 2017.
2017. And was that also for a chess event?
Yeah.
Knight
It was the
b3.
Blitz and Rabbit. You went knight b3.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go b4.
b4. So you're letting me take your a
Yes, please do.
Please do. Okay, that means I will not be taking the a
Why not?
I feel like the a file might be a little too open for that. All right, in that case, f4.
Uh-huh. All right. Leaving your g4 square to me
Yes.
entirely?
Yep.
That's very kind. All right, a5.
5. Oh, I'm gonna go rook a to e1.
h to e1.
H to e1, thank you. How long have you been playing chess for?
Well, I'm 42. I've been playing since I was 8.5.
8.5.
a4.
a4.
What about you?
I've been playing since I was 3,
Wow.
so now 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Knight to Knight to d4.
Okay. Were you always struggling with notation or?
Yes, I'm always strong. There's no notation on this, and I'm trying to think about questions at the
Okay,
same time.
okay.
Sorry.
Queen to c5.
Queen to c5. Everyone's just roasting me today. It's fine. It's totally fine. Knight to f3. I should just make easy moves so I don't have to embarrass myself.
Knight to g4.
Knight to g4. Finally go in there. Bishop takes e7.
King takes.
King takes e7. Okay. I'll go with e5.
Uh-huh. d5.
d5. Okay. I'll play f5.
Okay.
Do you think you have an advantage over the younger players with your experience, or do you feel like they might be a little faster?
They cannot be faster.
They cannot be
They're
faster.
only faster than mouse.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that.
Okay, e takes.
Yeah.
For those of you who might not know, Levant is one of the better bullet and blitz players, and just chess players in the world, obviously. All right, queen to g5 with a
King
check.
f8.
King f8. Bishop takes f5.
Bishop takes f5.
Bishop takes f5. Queen takes f5.
Now I gotta be cautious here.
You have 37 seconds.
Oh my god. Okay. g6.
G6. Queen to f4.
King g7.
King g7. Knight to g5.
Rook hf8.
Rook hf8. Pawn to e6.
f6.
f6. Okay. Knight to f7.
b3.
b3. Okay. Rook d2.
b takes a.
B takes a2. King takes a2.
Rook b4.
Rook b4. Queen to d6.
Queen c4 check.
For check. King a1.
a3.
Oh no. Oh no. This is looking a little rough. Oh wait, I have a fun move. Queen takes f8.
King takes f8.
E7.
King g7.
King g7. Queen e8 with a queen.
Knight to e3.
Knight to e3.
Yes.
Okay. Queen takes e3.
A takes b.
A takes b2 with a check. King to b1.
Queen a6.
Queen a6. Wow. Oh wait, no, I have queen to h6 with a check.
King f7.
King f7. Okay, queen to h7.
Yeah, I got made it. Well done.
All right, good game. Thank you so much for playing. Oh my gosh.
It's so badly.
I mean, it was really not that badly, but
I was just worried too much about the clock.
yeah, I think you had an amazing attack, but LeBron doesn't need to hear that from me. So thank you very much for
Thank you.
joining us today.
When the world of business is constantly changing, you need to stay ahead. So what about AI to generate new possibilities? Machine learning to predict what customers will like. Or expand your business by forecasting delivery routes with real-time data. With the power of the cloud, imagine how AWS can transform your business.
This wasn't just about who's the best. It was about who had to win.
This amount of money it's life-changing, not just for them, but everyone that is close to them.
It's crazy. They're so good at a game, they can make millions of dollars. Who are these people?
One win, one chance. For everything they carried with them.
Arjun is a very formidable opponent, of course. He's like very creative, he's like very versatile in the openings, but he always gives you chances, but he also always creates some chaos at the board, so whoever wins more games wins the match.
Jan Oponishi, one of the very best players in the world already for a couple of years. I would not rank him as high as, let's say, Magnus and Hikaru, but just below. Like, he's a very good player, of course.
Nihal Soren, it was a surprise in a way, but for me, it wasn't a big surprise.
Absolutely amazing to get a chance to play against Magnus. Speaking of a game plan, just try to give my absolute best to have any chance. If I'm in very good shape, I can put up a fight against pretty much anyone.
I was very impressed with Nihal, his speed and also his precision in pressure situations.
Alireza Firuzja is very strong, but he also has, I think, weaknesses. If I can exploit these weaknesses, I think I will have great chances.
I'm not sure what my style against him will be. Both Levon and myself, we've played each other many, many times over the years. When you play someone like Levon so many times, you become pretty familiar. Like, I know his style very well, Levon knows my style well. If you avoid losing, good things will happen.
Hikaru is a very special chess player. I mean, he is great at all-time control.
Hikaru, you always know you're going to get something spicy and strong from Hikaru every single time. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. Esports World Cup. It's a big day for everyone as we have more games and more matches today. We saw Jan Oponishi on the screen there and Arjun Erigaisi walking in. course, Genji there. So, guys, we are back with another day. I'm sure you are all excited and ready for the matches today, just as we are. I'm FIDE Master James Canty III here, joined with and by WGM Nemo and Grandmaster Benjamin Bach. How do we feel today, guys? We got some big matches coming up.
It's going to be exciting. I mean, first off, Jan Nepomniachtchi from Aurora Gaming is already seated against Arjun Arigasi of Genji. They're here. They're ready to go. How do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, the quarterfinal is really the best of the best facing off against one each other. I would give the slight edge to Arjun. I feel like his path to the quarterfinals has been very smooth. He won both of his matches in a group stage. Nepo has been struggling. He lost the very first match and he had to come back. He won the second match, but in the match against Esipenko yesterday, he was staring down the barrel of elimination. He lost the first game. Then in the second game, he was completely lost. Esipenko could have taken a rook and one move, did not. Nepo won that game, won the Armageddon. So he's here, but he had quite a path to get here.
Absolutely. They both had a path to get here, so two different ways, but now are facing each other. Let's take a look at these club championship standings in a way. Now, Nemo, let's talk about this for a second.
Team Vitality still in first with 2,400 points. Unfortunately, one of their chess players, Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, was eliminated yesterday. Will not be able to bring them another 1,000 points. But we have Genji Esports in close second. And who's playing today? Arjun Arigasi. If he wins today, he is going to be going on to the semifinals. And potentially, if he wins this one, he could bring his team to 3,000 points.
Yeah, no, definitely. Genji will be getting some points in this one, but Team Falcons as well. They still have Hikaru Nakamura and Alireza Farouj in this tournament, so they have two players to battle. Two players to battle, and don't forget, whoever wins today is also going to have to play against potentially Team Falcons, Alireza Firuza, or Nordebek of Navi.
We have a special day, of course, coming up of all chess, but we got to recap what happened yesterday, too, as well. We always want to recap the days as we see, right? This was crazy where, of course, Nihal Seren was able to actually take down Anish Giri here. And Giri had a chance to strike back in this game. As you see right here, everything's going well. You think Anish Giri will win this game, right? And then moving around, and then where's the queen? Wait, where's the queen, Bach? What happened to his queen, Bach?
He hung the queen on one move, but even after that, he could have still flagged Nihal, but Nihal, as we just saw, was just in time to get rid of all of Anish's pawns to secure the draw, and he even got the win.
And then what did he do here, Nemo?
I mean, Nihal has been performing exceptionally, perhaps not necessarily as well as Arjun Arigasi, but certainly enough to take down Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, sending Team Vitality MVL home in this endgame.
I mean, an incredible day of chess here, as we thought, you know, even Nihal Seren, as he told many people, even in the content piece we had on Nihal, he was saying, oh yeah, I'm an underdog, but when I feel like I can go or take it against anyone, is what he said in his words there, and he felt very good.
But sometimes being the underdog is a good thing, because there's less pressure, less expectations on you, right?
I don't have to perform, or do I, right?
Yeah.
Of course, right? It's very good to see Nihal in his element here. I think he actually very much so thrives with no increment and the faster time controls, which he said before. He's extremely fast, incredibly fast to be able to flag Anish Giri, how he did yesterday with 0.8 on the clock and was losing it down to queen and was able to finish, and then going to beat MVL. He's going to have, you know, some good things looking forward to him, but what's his good thing is facing who next, in fact.
He is going to be facing Magnus, but, you know, he did also get to crush the key.
Wow, here we go. Moment of silence, please.
Moment of silence for the key. Oh, wow, they pressed the button.
Yeah, it's actually pretty loud, too, as well. A lot of players I've seen cover their ears as they hear it crack there. Look at the key being crushed there.
Personally, if I was Maxime, I would wish I was able to bring this key home as potentially a trophy. Oh,
I told you.
I felt
like,
that through the screen.
Whoa, I didn't think that was going to happen. Yeah, it's a very loud pop there. Many players have done the same thing there. Nihal with a smile. He's like, yeah, that was sweet, bro. I need more of that, basically. This is what he's looking to do, but he's got to go through more chess as well. Keeps it going. He's able to crush that key there. Here's MVLs.
Yep. Maxime Vacher-Lagrave will not be able to take home his key, but he does still get to take home $50,000, which is not too shabby.
Absolutely not. That's a great payday, Humbach.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. The players are playing for a lot of money here, a lot of is at stake. And yeah, here we see Neil again, protecting his ears from the sound of the key crushing. His key is still intact, but he's facing off against Magnus Carlsen today. Will his key be crushed today, or will he crush Magnus's key?
That is something to watch there, of course. Magnus or Nihal, of course, you can put your predictions in chat there. Nihal is having an incredible run, but he is going to have to face the incredible player himself, actually, as in Magnus Carlsen here. But we still have our own matches over here on Stream B here that we're going to be watching, of course. But we got to take a look at the brackets, too, to see kind of who is facing off against who. Here we go with Group A. Take us through Group A here, Dima.
So Jan, as we have talked about, had a slightly shaky road to get to here. He did actually play Andrei Esipenko in his very initial Group A match, and he played Andrei Esipenko again last night. Isn't that right? And he went all the way to Armageddon.
Yep, but he made it through, and that's why he's right behind us, about to face off against Arjun Erigaisi. Here we have Group B. We see MVL winning the first match against Anish Giri, but then losing to Arjun. Arjun therefore qualified to the quarterfinals. And Nihal all the way made it through. He won the elimination match against Anish after that incredible time scramble, then defeated MVL as well, and that's why he's in the quarterfinals.
In the Group C, we also are going to see Hikaru advancing through against Wei Yi last night. His fellow teammate Alireza Firuza, also from Team Falcons, making his way through.
Yeah, Hikaru was staring down the barrel of elimination yesterday against Wei Yi. He was lost in the second game, but survived the one. The Armageddon was quite smooth, but he definitely had quite a wild ride to make it through to the quarterfinals.
Exciting games all around.
And in Group D here, we have, of course, Magnus Carlsen making it through, beating Jan Krzysztof Duda, and also beating Norderbek Abdusaturov and advancing to the finals there on the bottom. We have Fabiano, who actually lost to Jan, and then Norderbek actually, or Norderbek beating Fabi, and Norderbek beating Jan Krzysztof Duda.
Well, I do want to
Norderbek for the playoffs. What you
mention over there that Duda actually mouse slipped.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about
on
that.
move 5. I know we're like going through this bracket quite quickly, but here on Stream B, we've seen perhaps that Anish Giri Queen Blunder was a misclick, but nothing quite as bad as misclicking on move 5. That just throws your game away instantly.
The whole game, Bach. It was like 5 moves and he was done. The game was completely over. Just gifted it to him.
Yeah, heartbreaking for Duda there. He sacrificed a piece. He was about to win it back, but then made the wrong move, and it was just down a piece, so he just resigned. But our match of today is Hikaru Nakamura from Team Falcons against Team Reject, Levon Aronian. And Canty, Levon is in great shape. Normally we would say, like, oh, Hikaru is the favorite here, but Levon, he won the freestyle tournament in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Now here's been great shape. He won the last chance qualifier.
Right.
He's won some great matches here as well. So what do you make of this match?
I mean, as you mentioned, of course, he won just 2 big events, actually. He's feeling very confident. And in one of them, he actually beat Magnus 2-0, actually, in the Las Vegas event there. So a lot of times, I'm a good friend of
And I believe
Levon's.
he beat Hikaru as well in Las Vegas.
Yeah, he did. He was just going crazy here. That's why sometimes I'll call him LeBron Aronian. He loves that name. He watches basketball as well. But big things from Levon. But we also have Hikaru here, who is actually going to be looking to level that score. Let's take a look at this video that we have.
Jan Nepomniachtchi had a crazy journey to get here. He first lost to his opponent, Esipenko of Virtus.pro. In the initial match, he had to beat Esipenko in the lower bracket deciders to get here. That match was also intense. I mean, it went to Armageddon, and at the end, Jan did triumph.
Jan Nepomniachtchi is one of the greatest players of all time, actually. We have to put him up there. And the reason being is because he went to the World Championship twice. He actually made it back-to-back years. Jan Nepomniachtchi is also, he's very aggressive, but he's also very positional. He's a Russian schoolboy, right? The Russians are extremely strong at chess, so people forget how strong Jan actually is, and he is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, Jan Nepomniachtchi, one of the very best players in the world already for a couple of years. He's been a 2-time World Championship contender in classical chess, and he can also really play with the very best in the world. I would not rank him as high as, let's say, Magnus and Hikaru, but just below. Like, he's a very good player, of course.
Arjun is a very formidable opponent, of course. I think I played him twice during the Champions Chess Tour, and I won both matches. He's like very creative. He always gives you chances, but he also always creates some chaos at the board. So whoever wins more games wins the match.
Well, all right, it is game time. These boys are about to go at it. They're seated and ready to go. And of course, we're going to say bye to our analysts for now. We're going to bring on some casters, the commentary team, to talk and walk you through every play-by-play that's going to happen here. Jan Nepomniachtchi versus Arjun Erigaisi. It's going to happen in 10 seconds. You see the clock up there, boys and girls. Get ready. Put your predictions in the chat as it's going down here as we bring on our casters for today's match and all the matches today is going to be Grandmaster Ramon Hamilton and Grandmaster Eric Hansen. Let's go, guys.
Thank you, James, for the introduction. And these players, Eric, need no introduction. Jan Nepomniachtchi, Aurora Gaming, and of course, Genji's Arjun Erigaisi.
Yeah, this is the quarterfinals and probably the first day where I'm seeing a significant crowd presence. You have fans from both teams here in the Stadium B cheering on their players.
Yeah, there's actually a huge crowd of about 15, 20 fans that just walked in. And Eric, they're all supporting Genji. That must be a little intimidating for Jan. It's nice to see that, you know, the fans are rallying behind their players.
Yeah, as a player, I've always enjoyed when there's a crowd. It just feels like this is the big moment you played, you know, chess your whole life for.
And there you go. Well, let's get into things right here. Arjun starts with the white pieces, and Eric immediately, it looks like a very equal position, very symmetrical. But one thing that I noticed, key difference, pawn on c3 for white, knight on c6 for black. And the knight on c6 is not a great piece here, so it's going to take some time before Jan can really maneuver that knight to a better square.
It's going to take a bit of time, but one thing we know about Jan Nepomniachtchi, he's played a World Championship match, and he uses the Petrov all the time. He's very, very well prepared here. I'm curious to see what Erigaisi decides in terms of how to press. And G3 already is a move. Just looking at it visually, not the most common move, right, Amon?
Yep. No, it looks strange because it's destabilizing the knight on f3, but the reality is that the next move is going to be king to g2. The king is going to defend the knight, and once the knight is defended, then the queen from d1 can move away. If you move the queen away without playing g3, Eric, the bishop would capture that knight, the pawns would be doubled, that would be terrible. So this is just a way for Arjun to develop that queen on the next move.
Yeah, and if you're looking from white's perspective here, you see it's fairly symmetrical. What's a position you'd like? I want black's bishop on h5 to take the knight on f3. I'll take back with the queen, and I'll have a bishop pair. The bishop pair, we talk about it quite a bit. It can give you a small advantage, especially when there's lots of pawns on the board, both sides of the position. That's the type of exchange that's beneficial for white. Black's perspective, he probably doesn't want to do that. Probably that bishop on h5, it's trying to be a nuisance on h5. But once white invests some time and deals with it, it's going to fall back to g6. Challenge that good light squared bishop on d3. And again, in the Petrov, black is always asking white to push something. Black's job, fairly simple. I castle, maybe bring that queen on d8 up to d7, move that dark squared bishop out of the way. It could be f6, it could be f8, and we're looking at trades on the e-file. And again, even look at the pawn structure. Yes, there's a knight on c6, but there's no pressure from white right now. d5 can't be attacked by two of white's pieces yet. Queen b3, is that a decent move? It is. It hits b7. It puts a little bit of pressure on b5, but Arjun is going to need to use more pieces to actually pose a real threat.
And that's the thing, Eric, you mentioned the d5 pawn. Yes, you can attack it with the queen, but look at the positioning of the other pieces. The dark square bishop will never be able to help with that. You know, against the double G pawns, usually a very good way to play against them is to play a move like h4. We've seen this restricting move throughout the event so far, and the move h4 also comes with the idea of rook to h1 and h5. So you could actually see an initiative develop on the king side here, but that queen b3 move, you know, it draws the knight into the c4 square here. I think that Nepo can be pretty happy with this maneuver because I was mentioning the knight on c6 would want to reposition anyway.
Wants to reposition, and on c4 we see that if it gets harassed, black can probably trade on f4, bring the knight back to d6, and we're getting closer and closer to an endgame where even with those ideas you mentioned, that pawn on h3 pushes to h4, pushes to h5, you try to pry open the king side, well, you need pieces to continue that attack. So Arjun has to balance that. How can he actually generate that while avoiding mass trades on the e-file?
That's right, and you know, things are just settling in here. Bishop g5, queen d7. We want to remind our viewers that we are in the quarterfinals here, and it is a single elimination. So this match will eliminate one of these players right now. Also, Eric in the quarterfinals, 4 games. So a bit of a wider spread, you know, more games to decide who the better player is today.
Yeah, I think with a 4-game match, it changes things a little bit. Players, when they have their first game with white, they don't necessarily feel like they have to win that. I mean, they're going to try to, but let's say it's a draw. They have time to come back. It's significantly longer. You know, you're not playing someone who you feel like, I lose a game, I'm in a must-win situation. They're so good at drawing, so pretty much if you lose a game, you lose. Not in a 4-game match. We've seen lots of comebacks. I just want to say I like what Arjun's doing. He's imbalancing the position. That bishop g5 move a couple moves ago, it's a key move because he avoided a trade, and what he was trying to do was pull that f7 pawn to f6. If you can ever pull that queen on c2 is likely taking the g6 pawn even at the expense of a piece. That knight on f3 can join the game. So he's playing on both sides of the board. He's keeping the idea of maybe h4, h5 in the future, but right now c4 comes with just the basic threat of c5, forking the pieces. And yes, you can trade on the e-file once, but if you're black, do you want to trade once? No, you want to trade twice. You want to trade and bring another rook there, because if you just trade once and then play a passive move, you've given white control of the e-file.
Yeah, you can't afford to just do that without a follow-up. So if all the rooks could trade off, in fact, if the rooks and the queens, all the major pieces could trade off here, the endgame would be perfectly good for Jan Nepomniachtchi. But I don't think we're going to see that that happen here. Arjun is not going to allow that. As you said, playing on both sides of the board, I still like the idea of h4, h5. But I think he's maintaining that. He first wants to create some threats on the queen side. And you know what? They're difficult to meet. Because if you take on c4, well, b takes c4 back. How do you actually stop c5? It looks like you need to move one of these pieces.
He's calculating dc4, bc4, queen a4. I think that's one of the moves. If you can get the queens off, that could be an endgame to play. We have it on the board. That was the only move that I actually saw that I was comfortable with. And it's being played. This is a question for Arjun. I don't see how you avoid a queen trade. It doesn't mean it's a draw in position really equal. No, the pawn structure's a little bit imbalanced. And as white, I'm looking at c5. You know what c5 does? It commits your pawns on dark squares, but it might be a way to win the diagonal. You play c5, the bishop for black has to retreat. Maybe my bishop on g5 goes back to f4. I'm trying to provoke a move like c6, because if I ever provoke a move like c6 with my pawn on c5, then a move like rook b1 is very effective, looking at that b7 pawn. And once again, if I have that diagonal, if I get my bishop on f4, I'm cutting off the rook b8 defensive maneuver.
Exactly. And I think we may actually see all those moves happen. In terms of c6, I agree. It looks bad right on the spot. You play c6, rook to b1 looks like trouble. So what we might see instead is, if you want to defend that pawn, rook c8. But, you know, rook c8 gives up the e-file. I think rook e to c8 could be a consideration here. And you also have to look at that knight on a4. You know, it's not a piece that white can actually win, but it is sidelined and it will take some time to get back. Look out for the knight on a4 to jump into c3 and into d5. If black can achieve that, all of a sudden, Jan might have a phenomenal position.
Time is pretty competitive. As you mentioned, that knight on a4 would love to go to d5. I think a key to this position is that black doesn't panic. Yes, white's had a few active moves, pushed the pieces back, but it's limited material. And I think, yeah, as I said, trading and playing rook c8, white has the e-file. That's true. But black is a couple moves away from maybe playing f6, king f7. And on top of that, even without that, yes, there's the e-file. How do you use the e-file to your benefit? Because most of the moves you'd like to play, such as rook e7, are taken.
Exactly. I really like the move knight c3, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a move like rook e3, rook c1, just something that stops knight c3, Eric, because I really feel that after knight c3, d5, black is not just thinking about recovering the position, you're actually starting to maybe claim an advantage. When the knight's on d5, you can push b6, you can push b5. Suddenly, it's even Nepo playing for the advantage.
Yeah, white does not want an endgame where that d4 pawn becomes a long-term target. Rook c1 was played. I also thought rook e3, as you mentioned. And one of the ideas might be to play rook c4. That might provoke pawn to b5. Things to be calculated here.
Yeah, and f6 is a great move. It takes control of e5, g5, two squares that both the bishop and the knight for Arjun wanted to make use of. You talked about rook c4. There it is, Eric. b5, knight takes b6, and we have a forced calculation here. Yes, rook takes c7 can be played, but you know what? This is not as bad for Jan as it might look, right? This was a very intentional sacrifice here. He's going to have a phenomenal blockade on d5, but Eric, the material is, you know, that tells the full story. It is a full extra pawn for Arjun Erigaisi.
It's a full extra pawn, but I think the key word you mentioned was intentional. Jan went for this. That just means he's very confident. He can hold this position. You see his body language. He seems quite comfortable. The reason why this is a position where black has some confidence in holding is that knight on d5 is so strong. And even if that knight on d5 was removed and you placed black's king on d5, take away the knights, place black's king on f7 on d5, How do you kick away a king from a light square like that when all you have is a king and a dark squared bishop? There's positions where everything is blockaded, and I think there's great holding chances. So the key here for Arjun, you see knight e1. Maybe he's thinking knight c2, knight e3, so he can at least try to initiate a trade, correct his pawn structure, get support for that d pawn.
And this is a move that I was not expecting from Jan. I would have thought that he would want to trade the knights or trade the bishop for the knight. But the bishop trade, although it could be a very forcing line here, is surprising.
I agree. I don't think it's the most precise. Some of the endgames I discussed, they're a bit trickier with knights on the board. There's a way to force the king back. The key line here is to calculate as white. What happens when black brings the king to d5 and maybe the king even to c4? Can Nepo's king get to the queen side before white? So we're looking at knight c2, defending d4, king e6, king f3, king d5, king e3. You just calculate both sides converging towards the middle, and who's faster, who's quicker.
Yeah.
If Arjun gets his king on d3 here with a knight on c2, he has a strong push.
Very strong push. And now all of the stuff we were talking about blockades, Eric, it doesn't exist anymore. Because now if you trade the knights, it'll be a king and pawn endgame, which is almost always winning for white with the advantage of an extra pawn. King to d5, king c4, exactly our variation. He didn't want to play king e4 because of f5, which would have pushed him backwards.
And g4 played by Aragaisi. The key line to look at here is king c3, white plays pawn to d5.
That's right. Yeah, that pawn can go all the way. He plays a5. He's trying to get that pawn to a4 and then maybe play king to b3. But anytime the king moves, watch out for the move d5. And on top of that, I'm also looking at knight e7, Eric. Knight e7, maybe knight d5 check. I could see a few repetitions there. And if white maybe doesn't stick in the center, you can go with king b3 next. And then you've blockaded that pawn.
Yeah, this is tricky because that knight on c2, it's covering a3 and d4, but whenever you push the king up, as we see right now, black has that tempo. You move that king in, you're attacking the knight, and if that knight ever moves, you don't want to lose the a-pawn as white. The only case where it's okay to lose the a-pawn is if you're winning some race with a d-pawn, because black's pawn has already advanced all the way to a5. You win a3, it's an outside passer, so this is all critical. The good thing for the players is they have 4 minutes approximately each heading into this knight king pawn endgame.
And that's a long time to calculate just the endgame here. But let's be clear, Eric, this is a 3-result game. Anyone can win this position, even though white has the extra pawn. So from that perspective, it feels like Jan has done well for himself. Because king b3, you start to get nervous as white. You lose the a-pawn. It is an outside pass pawn, which is the worst thing for a knight to defend.
He is going for it. He's pushed d5, allowing king b3. After knight e5, white can't play king d3 to defend the knight. So what do we play? Is f4 consideration? King takes c2, f takes c5, white wins the race.
Yeah, f4, we might see the knight drop back. Also, knight c4 looks like a good next move. It covers d6, it hits a3. I'm looking at knight d4 check, king takes a3, knight c6. Doesn't look like you can take that pawn. I'm also hitting the a5 pawn. This is it's become a complete mess.
Even though white's up a pawn, there's a lot of stress in terms of losing the a3 pawn and losing a race. I'm okay as white losing both of my pawns on the d and the a file to just get a king and pawn endgame where my king is closer to the remaining pawns on the king side. But can Arjun get that? Knight c6 you move. I said, I don't mind liquidating. I do not mind liquidating, but I need to win that a5 pawn.
Yep, knight c6,
I need to take the risk away.
At least you can take it. Maybe knight c6, although you can't capture the knight on c6, black can play knight c4, and it's kind of what you're talking about. You are able to maybe sacrifice for that a-pawn, push d6, king d5. It's so tense, these situations where a knight is required to catch a pass pawn, because sometimes, Eric, you can be down the piece and actually winning the endgame.
Yeah, when there's a far passed pawn, the knight's only job is to blockade it. It can't win it. And when that happens, then you can use your king and pick up the rest of the pawns. Arjun would love to do that. He doesn't mind some of those endgames. And we see knight c6 played. It's all about containing the a-pawn. Once the a-pawn is contained, white can focus on the king side and his d-pawn.
Okay, this is a pure race here. What happens after
a4?
a4? I'm looking at a lot of positions, Eric, where knight d4 happens, knight d4 check. And maybe, are we even possibly getting a draw here because the black king wants to stay protecting that knight?
We could be. Unless Arjun sees something really good. Remember, he's down a minute and a half almost. Nepo really fast the last 10, 15 moves. He's putting pressure on despite being down a pawn. And this race, I don't see anything convincing right now. And it's a tough decision to make. Do you go for it? This is all concrete. But does he have enough time to find those variations?
Well, both players, Eric, are really happy if the other one pushes the pawn because that gives you an opportunity to sacrifice for it. It's counterintuitive, but that's exactly what you want. So you'll probably see the move A3 delayed here by black, and same with the move D6 by white.
I'm expecting F5, but taking is no problem. It doesn't change the fact you trade off the D pawn and the A pawn. White's king should be there first. Nepo has to make sure that doesn't happen. Keep the looming threat of A3. What's the move here? Is it knight E5? Oh, yeah. D6.
D6, I mean, I was expecting it to be taken, which I think was completely fine, but he decides to go with knight to E5. And we have a situation where both players want to advance the pawn, but the knight is right there covering.
There's endgames here, Amon, where Nepo will sack his knight for that D pawn. He will not push A3. He'll just use his king to harass White's knight. If White's king goes too far to pick up that knight, harass the knight on B5. The knight doesn't have good squares to fall back to, and there are repetition ideas.
Yeah, I think this is very likely headed towards a draw. Also, with 1 minute for Arjun, you know, he's not incentivized to do anything too crazy here, and this looks like our repetition, Eric, and a peaceful result in game number 1, a knight endgame. Very tricky. I don't think that there was ever enough for Arjun to really feel bad about this result, but Eric, he was up a pawn.
He was up a pawn, and the way Nepo comfortably held him, that has to be a big confidence booster for Nepomniachtchi. I think that was actually just one of the best played endgames we've probably had the privilege to cover.
Yep.
It's just thematic, using that outside pawn to make it as hard as possible for White to push through, because it shows knights are so bad at stopping those outsiders.
Yeah, and we could see that each knight was entirely chained down to just one square, one responsibility. You can imagine a bishop would be able to perform the same task, but from a long distance where it could attack other things as well. So you can see how poor those knights are at stopping pass pawns, and that's why Nepomniachtchi did the right thing. He went for activity in that endgame, Eric. He wasn't going to sit there and just beat down that pawn, maybe play defense. No, he brought his king actively, aggressively out, and that was the big difference and the reason he was able to secure that draw.
Yeah, everything Nepomniachtchi played was accurate, because if he'd slow down one move, Aragaisi would have been in time to put his king on D3, taking away what we saw in the game where Nepo's king came in and was able to find that B3 square, harass the A pawn, and that's what helped the game at the end of the day.
And there you go. You mentioned in these 4-game matches, we do see more peaceful results early on. The players kind of feel each other out. You know, what openings are we going to play? What kind of games are we going to play? Jan Nepomniachtchi is a very fast player, and I noticed, Eric, towards the end of that game, while he was down a pawn, he also maintained some very impressive speed. So he made sure to put pressure on Aragaisi on the clock as well. And I think that's going to be something we need to pay attention to in this match, is how is the clock management game between these two players?
I think that game demonstrated some of Nepomniachtchi's abilities. He is an extremely quick and accurate calculator. He trusts himself. Yes, sometimes he'll make some big blunders, but for the most part, that's a strength of his, that he can calculate quickly, he can gain an advantage on the clock. And these players, when you're a fast player, fast calculator, in those end games, 2 minutes left, he might be seeing a little bit further than his opponent. In this game, Arjun, I think, did a great job of always maintaining some control. There's no need to take extra risk there. It's just game 1. He had the white pieces, and a draw is a fair result. And we're about to begin game 2, Nepo with the white pieces.
That's right. Yeah, now it's his turn. You know, we get to see what Nepo is going to do here in game number 2. A reminder that 2.5 is that magic number here, because we're playing this best of 4. Player that gets 2.5 points will win the match. So still a couple wins away for both of these players. But I would say, you know, early on, draw, fair result. Neither player can be too unhappy about that game, but I would be a little happier if I was Nepo. You know, it wasn't maybe the easiest game being down a pawn, but he played very quick. He didn't lose his cool, and I don't think he ever really gave up on the position.
Yeah, and I think if we talk about strategy, when you play the Petrov, I mean, truthfully, it mainly is a drawing weapon. And the way you win games in the Petrov is when your opponent overpresses, desperate to win, create some weaknesses. That didn't happen, but his job, he played something solid. He got the draw which he was looking for. Now he has the white pieces. I definitely think the ball's in his court now.
Exactly right. A draw is usually considered a good result with the black pieces. White moving first has that slight edge in chess, but Arjun, you know, he's not played as many matches as Nepo, right? He kind of had smooth sailing into this quarterfinal, whereas Jan Nepomniachtchi had to work a little harder. In fact, yesterday, Eric, there was a moment where we thought we might be saying goodbye to Nepo from this event, and you know, it just kind of all turned around in his match against Esipenko. So he's kind of counting his lucky stars to be here, but he's making the most of it, and I like what I saw from him in game number 1. It looks like we are moments away from game number 2.
Yeah, I think talking about it, Nepo hasn't played the best chess, but he's made it into the quarterfinals, and he's a veteran.
Yep.
You let those guys linger in the event, you know their top capabilities, and if he hits his stride, this guy's achieved pretty much everything you can in chess besides that classical world championship title. So just letting players like Nepo of his quality just stay in the event. He is a veteran in playing matches in high stakes chess. At the same time, Arjun, he's joined the world elite in the last couple of years, and he's here to stay. He continues to improve his game. I'm very impressed that even in this 10-minute format, he's made it to the quarterfinals. So it's a very hard match from a prediction perspective.
Yeah, Arjun Erigaisi, we actually talked about the kind of the fan base that came in here supporting Genji, and I can tell that he's noticed them. They're right behind us here while we're casting, and it's a large crowd, you know, 15, 20 people. We can say it's the largest crowd that we've seen for any player, any match that we've casted here.
Yeah, it's standing room only, so it might not sound like a lot of people, but it's crowded around the players.
Okay, and here we go. It looks like the moves were already underway. I was going to say they look like they were in the thinking pose, Eric.
They did look like they were in the game, but we finally have it in front of us, and we have a Sicilian. A very sharp one that, at first glance, looks to be favorable for Erigaisi. What I see, Black's king already castled, White hasn't. That bishop on f6 is active. The pawn on h4 looks funny to me. h4 is a very common move to pry open, you know, an opponent's king side, but it doesn't feel very coordinated here. White needs to decide where to castle, but there's a threat. There's knight takes c3, ruining the queenside pawn structure. So if I'm going to queenside castle, I don't want doubled c-pawns. And already a big decision for Nepo. He's like, you know what? Let me play h5. One thing to consider, he hasn't castled. He could castle kingside, but it just feels like Black has played standard moves. Meanwhile, Nepo's playing a bit off the cuff here. I even see ideas like when that knight on d5 vacates, that d7 pawn would love to push to d5 for Black. Black has potential in the center. Right now, Black has that e and d pawn. At some moment, that knight will move. Black will play pawn d7, d5. The e pawn will push to e5. And I can envision a future where Arjun has a significant space advantage.
Yeah, I was going to mention this move. It's kind of the obvious move here. Knight captures on c3 because it accomplishes what you were talking about, Eric. It gets the knight out of the way, allows those central pawns to advance for Black, but also, let's just look at the position. It doubles the pawns. Doubled isolated c-pawns are going to appear in the position here. Even if you capture with the bishop, for Nepo, the bishop will capture on c3, and pawn takes on c3. I mean, just looking at the position visually here, the pawn structure is not that good for White. So because of that h-pawn out there, and now because of the doubled isolated c-pawns, Eric, where's the safest place for this king? It's feeling like you could still castle queenside, but that comes with a lot of risk.
Comes with a lot of risk. You can tell already that Nepo doesn't like his position because he's down on the clock, and he's a very confident, quick player. And just look at it structurally. When you just push your h-pawn, you need coordination, you need pieces. I'm not convinced that h-pawn is at this by pushing the h-pawn, Black is castled, Black is in time to play pawn d7, d5. I keep mentioning that move. Why? Look at the bishop on b3. When I develop my bishop, I want an open diagonal. As soon as Black plays that pawn at d5, I don't know what open diagonal I'm looking at, and I don't know how to break through there, especially without weakening my king.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the king side here because I'm expecting that Jan, of course, wants to play pawn h6 next. So we see queen a5, immediate threat, pawn on c3. It does feel like you can defend this maybe with rook h3, Eric, which I was actually looking at and maybe going to suggest on its own. And that's a move that I feel like for Nepo is really, really easy for him to play because he was considering it regardless. And now it actually defends the c-pawn as well.
I always tell people you can't just attack out of nothing. Your opponent needs to make mistakes for an attack to work. When I see this H-pawn pushing, when I see rook H3, I don't know what Arjun has done incorrectly. I don't think he has done anything incorrectly, so I'm not optimistic about White's attacking chances. Black's done all the right opening principles, developed. Now the queen is there, the rook slides in, rook b5 is a very, very nice looking move. There's ideas to attack h5, ideas to go rook e5, but White has sacrificed a lot to achieve this position. Development has been sacrificed. Pawn structure has been sacrificed. And for what? Is this h-pawn going to win? Are we going to play pawn h5 to h6 and somehow get a checkmate on g7? That's what Nepo's banking on, but I'm certainly not convinced here. I think right now Arjun's doing really, really well. And knowing him, watching his chess, he's a very ambitious player. He's playing this position for a win. He's thinking, how can I get to White's king on c1? Is that going to involve maybe pushing the c-pawn up to c4, trying to open up the b file? But you know what? There's different win conditions. There's the attacking chances, which opposite side castling, maybe both sides. White would like to attack Black's king, vice versa. But structurally, White is at a disadvantage here.
Yeah,
and
you
that's
can also
another
trade.
endgame opportunity.
Exactly. You can trade. You don't have to win just by the attack. Speaking of the attack, queen to a3 check. It's probably the first move that comes to mind here. You know, you just castled, if you're Nepo, into kind of an open file, doubled pawns in front of your king. I was looking at queen a3 and a5, a4, which is still possible even on the next move here. One feature of the move rook e5, I don't really know if Arjun's going to be thinking like this, but you know, if the queen moves anywhere except g4, Eric, you could actually consider just taking on h5. We talk about different win conditions. If you're not believing in the attack here, then maybe you do capture that pawn on h5 and just kind of call the bluff.
Well, he's playing on both sides. He's maintaining attacking opportunities, but he's also introducing positions where White goes into a bad endgame. If the rook slides over to e3, sheltering the queen from the rook, as you mentioned, that h5 pawn is loose. If you play queen to g4, f2 could be loose in some variations. Maybe I throw in rook g5. What targets does Nepo have here to generate counterplay?
Yeah, probably the only thing about Arjun's position that hasn't been realized yet is that bishop on c8. It's actually performing a very important defensive task on the pawn on d7, and if you play d5, it's covering e6, but it hasn't developed yet. We do see queen d2. He prioritized the f2 pawn over the h5 pawn, but what we're seeing here in both games so far is just that little bit of a push from Eric Geisy, right? An extra pawn. I wouldn't say he's got anything to complain about from this game.
He's up a full pawn here, and what you'd like to do is, Black, find a way to get the kings off. Sorry, queens off. You can't get the kings off. You get the queens off, then your king on g8 goes to e7. I'll eventually start pushing the d-pawn. And if you're wondering why he didn't push the d-pawn earlier, it was controlling, it was still blocking White's bishop, still taking away counterplay, and he just didn't want to give Nepo any targets. Nepo likes to attack. The problem here, e6 might be considered a target, but as long as that bishop on b3 is closed off, I just don't see it. I think if I'm in Nepo's shoes right now, I realize I'm down a pawn. I realize I have no advantage. I'm going to play fast and just make the conversion hard. If I try to generate an attack, I expose my own position and my own faults in like the bishop on b3, the pawn structure. No, I think at this point, just like Arjun tried to convert this, like he did in the previous game, Nepo just went down a pawn, played quickly and confidently, put up stubborn defense. I don't see what other option there is here.
And there's some big threats on the board coming. The queen just went back to c6, to b6, excuse me. So the c6 pawn moving up to c5, moving up to c4. Eric, even if we don't win that bishop, I'm concerned that the bishop's going to retreat to a2, maybe if you move your king first, and the bishop is 100% trapped on that square. So c5, c4 is not just about maybe winning the bishop, but also just trapping it.
As you mentioned, it traps the bishop. You push that pawn to c4. White doesn't have a d-pawn or b-pawn to pry that open, to play d3 or b3. So you're right. If Black gets c5, c4, I think this game will be over.
C4 was forced, Eric. I'm willing to say forced, because if Black played c4, the bishop would be 100% locked out of the game. This looks like a terrible move. The bishop is practically trapped now, but at least in the future, you can move that other c-pawn on c2, and the bishop can make use of the b1, h7 diagonal. So this doesn't look pretty. I expect d4 keeping the pawns on dark squares. Big achievements for Arjun, but I do think that Nepo had to play this move.
Yeah, I think Nepo's doing the right things right now. He's back a little bit on time. And you mentioned the move d4. I think d4 makes sense. Pushes on a dark square. You don't want to allow White's bishop to join the game easily. But when you play a move like d4, you're also losing some squares these last couple of moves. Maybe Nepo puts his queen on e5. Look at that queen on e5. It puts pressure on c5, puts long-term pressure on that e6 pawn. And yes, White's position looks ugly, but at the end of the day, it's up to Arjun to figure out, how am I going to make progress here? How am I going to trade? How do I get the queens off? How do I get the rooks off? And even looking at that e6 pawn, another question is, how can I bring this bishop on c8 as an active piece in the game, not just, you know, sitting on c8 or d7 defending e6.
Yeah, let's remember, it hasn't moved yet. Matter of fact, he hasn't completed development as of yet. Rook f4,
nice
much
move.
More aggressive move. So if the pawn on c4 captures on d5, immediately we're looking at pawn to c4. Hitting that bishop, it is pinned thanks to the queen on b6. So this move is much different than d4. I think they're both good moves, but I mean, this is really going for it, Eric.
A5, I love it. Nepo is a sharp player. He's looking for active solutions. If you take on a5, then we once again have to calculate c takes d5 because there's no more pin on the b file.
There's no more pin. That is a crafty move there. And even if you sort of decline it, don't accept this pawn sacrifice, move your queen backwards, that's not where you want your queen. Queen b7, queen b8, just in order to maintain the connection there.
Things are getting very sharp here because in some position you might be able to take on d5.
Yeah.
It requires calculation. C takes d5, pawn c4, and the question is, can I then play a move like g3? There's a lot of calculation involved right now. It helps that Arjun's bishop is in the game because, yes, black is banking on c4 working if you take on d5, but that requires the rook to stay on the fourth. So Nepo's looking to take on d5 and meet a move like c4 with a move like queen e3 or g3. I think g3 is required first. It just depends. Can that rook stay on the fourth? If it can, that's great for the attacking chances. If it can't, this might be a chance for Nepo to get back in the game. And queen e5, I love that move, Amon.
Yeah, it's a different way to try to get back in the game. Yes, you're trading queens. You are down a pawn. Matter of fact, you might even be down another pawn after pawn takes on c4, but you have rook takes on c5 that you can throw in there. This is not necessarily just, only chances for Arjun. I think that with the d pawn loose here, you have to make some big decisions if you're Arjun Erigaisi.
You mentioned the key line. You take on c4. I have the Zwischenzug, the in-between move. Rook takes c5, hitting the bishop on c8 with check. Arjun plays king f7. He might meet c takes d5 with king f6, bring the king a bit closer. But all of a sudden, we have material equality here.
Yeah, this has been a big comeback for Nepo. He's also still up that time, that 30 seconds. He's a very, very confident and quick player. You can't take on e6 with the pawn. King takes on e5, e7. The bishop can still catch that pawn with bishop d7. So you have to move your rook away here. So if you go rook back to e1, rook e3, I guess we're going to see pawn to c4 and try to take that d pawn, Eric.
Are there any in-between moves here? G3 is always the move I'm looking at because if you play, oh, he takes here first. I was going to mention, if you play G3, maybe you can harass the rook. Nepo goes for this line. I think, okay, the decision is obvious. It's bishop a4 or bishop a2. With bishop a4, you have to watch out for c3 check. And now the rook on f4 hits a4. He plays bishop c2.
Yeah, now c3 doesn't work the same way, so he's going to go on the other side of the board, h5, h4, g5. The bishop on a2 is out of the game right now, but White can play king c3. The thing is, look at that bishop on a2. It is 100% not participating here, so you're going to see moves like g5 for Arjun. He's not looking to do anything because it's White who's struggling for a move.
Yeah, and what you mentioned, pushing on the king's side, this position might be equal material, but it's not an equal position. If black ever manages to win g2 in a race, that outside h-pawn is very, very close to queening. And those pawns on g2 and f3 are in light squares.
You're playing up a piece, Eric. Yeah. The bishop on a2 goes back to b1, cannot move away. So much effort. That's why you see g4. He's trying to open things up, crash through. There's bishop d5, the rook on g4. You're basically playing 2-on-1 here.
If you can't win that pawn on c4, you're completely right. And Nepo's not making any moves that contribute there. He's choosing passive defense. When Jan is playing passive defense, you know he's not comfortable.
Yeah, he always likes to solve his problems actively, but I mean, it is just plain and simple.
What
The
a
bishop
move.
on a2 cannot participate in this game. The g2 pawn will fall, and at this point, you can even take with the bishop and just play h3, h2, h1 queen.
It's the best way to do it. You take on g2 with the bishop and you're sheltering. Then you play h3, h2. But you know what? What's the rush? g2 will fall regardless. Arjun is saying, I'm going to optimize my king position first. There might be a position where the king gets the c5 pawn, and then he throws in the rook g3 check first, forces the king further back, and then takes on g2.
King c5 certainly here looks like the right move. Activating that king, as you said, intending rook g3, and rook g3 comes with an even bigger threat of c3 after. I think you have to take this pawn. I mean, it's been so many moves without actually capturing this g-pawn. It's finally time.
He's just deciding, does he take first or does he throw in c3? Nepo is down almost 20 seconds.
You can probably run the h-pawn, h3, h2, but you know what? You start to get a little nervous. Don't want to lose a7.
I think you can just run it because your bishop controls the queening square. So he's just pushing h3, h2.
That's
he
it.
slides the rook over. He's making a queen, and he still covers a8.
And
this is a lost position for Jan.
This is looking effortless. Arjun Erigaisi, he's up on time. He just needs to slide that rook over, and he has done rook f2. Notice the bishop on d5. Compare it to the bishop on a2. d5 covers h1, helps black queen. It also stops white from queening. It's doing everything.
Nepo's taking a breather here. I think he knows he's in lost position. He's just trying to stabilize his thoughts. But how depressing is it to play this full game without your bishop? What a win by Erigaisi.
Wow. Arjun Erigaisi with the win for Genji. And remember, of course, Eric, this is not the end of the match, but it is a big step in the right direction for Arjun. Both games he's been up upon. In one of them, he finally got the conversion. That's a pretty big deal and a lot of confidence going into the next one. Yeah, I'm looking at this this game, Eric, and just thinking back on it, Arjun has looked really, really good in this matchup, right? Compared to Nepo, he's had chances in both games. He's converted in one of them. He could have converted in both. You have to be feeling confident if you're Arjun.
Yeah, he's pushing the pace. When we joined in that second game, I mentioned from the start, Arjun had a great opening position. Nepo's bishop was out of the game. It was out of the game until the very end.
Yeah.
You can't afford to play like that against a guy like Arjun. There are players that Nepo is capable of overwhelming. He's very tactical. He solves bad positions by out-tricking you, out-calculating you. Arjun is that's his strength as well, and he's proven that even in this game. Even when Nepo broke free, it felt like he was stabilizing. Arjun continued to put pressure on and made it very uncomfortable.
And I think one of the most impressive things in that game that we saw is that Nepo did have moments where the position looked like he was making a small comeback and it was destabilizing. But as you said, he maintained his composure in those moments. He made sure that it never turned into an advantage for Nepo, and ultimately that's why he's up 1.5 to half. And the players are going to be taking a break themselves, which means we are going to do the same. We'll be back with game number 3 after this break.
There's a lot of pressure on my shoulders to make my mom and dad proud.
It's the best feeling watching him live out his dream.
It's this pressure that you have on you that if you don't win, you lose your job.
Kita udah nunjukin kalau ladies itu juga tetap bisa bersaing di scene cowok.
No big deal, just the hopes and dreams of thousands of supporters riding on one kid's split-second decisions and lightning-fast hands.
You can do this. I believe in each and every one of you, but the mission's not done.
You want to make a run at the title, you have to run a gauntlet of competition.
Competing at this level comes with a lot of sacrifice.
The thing is about these top teams, it's win or bust.
For some of these players, that's their life.
Welcome to the Esports World Cup. This is the Super Bowl, the World Cup, and the Olympics, all rolled into one event for the first time ever.
We are coming for you.
If you're betting against me, that's going to wake me up and get me to playing best I can.
I fucking got the shit. You heard that?
Nothing is granted, everything is earned.
Is your job on the line?
I believe it's on the line, as it should be.
Welcome back, everyone. The Esports World Cup continues. This is the chess quarterfinals. Eric, we've been covering Arjun Erigaisi, Jan Nepomniachtchi. We're sort of at that halfway point, but I will point out that this is actually match point for Arjun. If he wins, he moves to 2.5. That's enough to win the match.
That's the key score, and just looking at the first half of this match, you have to tip your cap to Arjun. He's pressing both games. Uncomfortable situation for Jan. When you talk about Jan Nepomniachtchi as a player, he's very resourceful, he's very quick, he's very tactical. It feels like in both games, Arjun has taken away a lot of that venom.
Yeah, you even mentioned it. We actually saw Jan Nepomniachtchi kind of defending passively because he just had no other choice, because Arjun was kind of strangling the life out of the position. So it's been a very impressive match from a strategy perspective. So far, he's getting his positions, and most importantly, he's getting positions that Jan doesn't seem comfortable with.
That's all it takes. In 10-minute chess, you can't think too much. You get uncomfortable. Everyone has seen Jan's body language. He can beat himself up, but he finds a way back into the game. Arjun, he's managing to really restrict that. If that continues, it's a really uphill battle, but we're back to game 3.
Here we go. We're starting with E4, the Sicilian here. And, you know, immediately, Jan choosing this opening, he's looking for a fight, but also he knows he needs to get back into this match. It's not just that he needs a win right here, but he just needs a game, Eric, that is more inspiring, that gives him a bit of confidence. Even a draw here in a good way would give him a lot of confidence for the next one.
A draw where he's putting pressure on his opponent, absolutely. It cannot be understated. That last game was a disaster. That opening was bad. There was no pressure. Arjun had a good position. Whether you're playing black or white, that was a great position for black objectively. He had the opportunity to attack. He had the opportunity with the end game grind, which we ended up seeing. That's how he took home the point. Can't give Arjun that much space. He's got to play tighter here.
That's right, and Arjun also has the white pieces here, so this is kind of I mean, for obvious reasons, a very important match, but you know, it could all end here, and Arjun has the white pieces, sort of has the initiative to maybe do so. And we see the move F4. He's not holding back here, Eric. F4, when you think about the move F5, yes, it hits that bishop on E6. It's a huge consideration here. If the bishop would capture the knight on B3, white would capture back, and the light squares in Jan's position would be quite weak all of a sudden. So the move bishop C4 is usually the reaction to F5.
Yeah, and one thing to notice, and we're watching this throughout the EWC, is we have so many sharp young players in the event. Arjun is up in this match, but he's not afraid to enter really, really tactical, aggressive positions against Jan. It shows he's very confident, and he knows. How does he win this match? Just plays his style of chess. It's working right now. Don't deviate. Some players, they're up in the match. They do change the strategy. Like, you know what? I'm going to play a bit more solid. This isn't solid at all. White's castled. Jan is, you know, he's got his rook on c4. One of the ideas here for White, when you're ahead in development, is to make your opponent uncomfortable before they can castle. What am I looking at if I want to make my opponent uncomfortable? A move like g4. g4 looks a bit wild, but if I can push that pawn to g5, black is lacking a little bit of space on the king side.
We see knight d2 to kick the rook out. So most likely, the rook is going to move back, but there's so many options, c6, c7, c8. He decides to pick the obvious rook c8. Now, in terms of a slower move, a3 can be considered here by Arjun, just to prevent b4, kind of an annoying move that forces your knight to move. This is so direct that we know the continuation is going to be b4 and knight d5.
Arjun will not play moves like a3 unless he feels it's necessary. He's here to put pressure on Jan.
Yep, you called it, and he's not holding back here. The e4 square has suddenly become available for white's knight. Queen d3 can follow up. The a6 pawn is a potential target, and most importantly, if the knight jumps into the c5 square, you might see a situation where Arjun willingly gives away that dark squared bishop for the knight in order to sort of put his knight on the e4 square and play all on the light squares against that dark square bishop for Jan.
Definitely, knight c5, I like that move. You give up the bishop, but if you can plant a knight on e4, that's fantastic. I like a5 as well. One of my ideas is to consider moving my b pawn to b3. Why? I would like to place my knight on d2 on c4. It frees up my queen. It targets d6. I can use the b6 square. But with knight f6 being played by Nepo, we have d5 hanging here. Question for Arjun.
Yeah, and a question that needs answering. Nepo is almost at 9 minutes here, so he's got a big time advantage. And to be honest, just looking at the body language, he's looking much more comfortable than we have seen him so far. Knight f6 hits the d5 pawn. It also prevents knight e4. The knight on d2 can't quite make it to that c4 square. You wanted b3, Eric, but it takes a few moves to get there. b3, knight c4, he doesn't have time. There's also no time for knight e4. So how do you actually defend the d pawn? Well, if you take your knight on d2 and you move it to f3, yes, temporarily you've defended d5, but the knight on f3 is not at all where you want to put that piece. So he's in a tough spot because all the squares he wants to move that knight are not really possible.
Yeah, knight f3, for the reasons you mentioned, is an ideal. You want your knight on e4 or c4, but you can't afford to lose the d5 pawn. If you play queen f3, defending d5, c2 is loose. Look at the clocks. Clearly, if this was in Arjun's prep or something he was comfortable with, he wouldn't be down 2.5 minutes with white this early on.
Exactly. Knight f6 was played very quickly from Jan. This was a move that said no problem. If you play bishop b6, hitting the black queen, supported by that a5 pawn, he's happy to take a step forward with the queen. Queen d7 puts pressure on f5. Remember, the d5 pawn is still hanging. And if the knight captures on d5, suddenly the bishop would also be hanging on b6. So there's so many reasons why the position is just easy for Jan to play. Not to mention, he's got easy moves like castling next.
Another drawback of bishop b6, I'm happy to play queen d7 pressuring f5, but that queen on d7 can slide over to b5. And on b5, that's an additional attacker on d5 for black. And just look at white's pieces. They're not in position to support d5. That's the center pawn. When white castles early, gets a lead in development, you want something tangible in return. You lose your center. That's it. That's a big advantage for black. Right now, Nepo is doing very well. And again, the body language, the clock usage tells the story. You do not want to be down 2, 3, 4 minutes this early on with easy counterplay for Nepo. His move wasn't hard. Knight f6. That's one of the most natural moves in the position. Arjun has clearly missed something to end up in the think tank this early on.
This is not looking good. I wonder, do you consider queen f3? Because Eric, we can talk about how easy this move was for Nepo to play, but the position is difficult. What do you even do as Arjun? He decides on knight b3, but look at the scope of that knight.
The queen's coming to c4 here. The knight is terrible on b3. It has no future squares. That's why I'm saying it's terrible. It can't jump to d4. It can't go to c5. It's only there to free up the queen to defend d5. But what does that mean? White is choosing passive defense, and when he spent that much time, he must have recognized that was the only option. He's not happy to play this. Big pressure for Jan this early on.
If knight e4 happens, then the rook can go to e2 to sort of keep everything defended for the moment. Knight g4, just not really enough just yet. You can keep that bishop. I think he's probably just going to take it easy. Castles. Bring the rest of the pieces in. He doesn't need to rush at this point, but the only move that looks really challenging is maybe knight g4.
Knight g4 is challenging. I might place my bishop on b6 there. Queen e4 is going for more. As you mentioned, castling, you maintain the advantage. Why do I think black has the advantage? The pieces are more active, and White's pawns are loose on d5 and f5. Queen e4 is saying, they are so loose that I can pick up a pawn before even castling. That's what he's arguing for right now, that either c2 or d5 or f5 will fall. And we see that queen on e4. That is a pretty nice square. It really does hit the bishop and those 3 pawns.
It hits everything.
What can Arjun play here?
I mean, I'm looking at queen f3. It's not a pretty looking move. You will double your f-pawns, but it feels like, Eric, he's already committed to that very passive style of defense. Once you start down that path, you kind of have to commit to it. So queen f3 looks like the expected move.
It was the only move to defend everything.
Yep.
And I'm not sure Nepo should be giving Arjun only moves instead of tough decisions.
That's right.
Is Black still doing well here? Yes, but those doubled pawns on the f file, they might have some positives. The f3 pawn controls e4 and g4 from Black's knight, and the f5 pawn, I wouldn't say it's a great pawn, but it's not easy to just be picked off. That bishop on e3, fortunately, it covers the f4 square from Black's rook, so he can't just slide in and take it. But Nepo's going for quick play here. King d7 indicates my king's in the middle. I'm going to shift my rook from h8 to c8, and you might have to play a move that like knight a1 that no one wants to play, but we can't afford to lose any pawns. And we can't afford to lose that rook on d2, even with an even trade. The key to this position, if Nepo manages to win the d5 pawn outright, that will be a winning advantage.
Eric, the move knight a1 has just been played, and dare I say that potential next move could be b3, which would actually temporarily trap the knight in the corner. But b3 has an idea to win the b4 pawn. So this move makes more sense.
Rook b5 maybe.
Yeah.
Because I always say the d5 pawn is the weakest pawn in the position, and if you win it, you get to push your center. White loses everything. It forces bishop b6.
Bishop d8, right? I mean, just remove the bishop. A little bit of calculation maybe about b3.
Well, there was bishop d8, but I was also curious about moves like rook f4. Everything looks good for Nepo here. The knight on a1. You know what? This looks similar to a game Nepo just lost. He had his bishop stuck. In this case, Arjun has a knight on a1. Can it join the game? Sure, it can go back to b3, but on b3, we've already spoken about this. It has no future. It needs a good square, and it's many, many moves away from that.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, the worst square on the chessboard that you can put a knight is the corner. It can only move to 2 squares there, has reduced scope, and after the bishop exchange, there's really nothing that's going to stop rook b5, rook f4, rook c5. Eric, all these pawns are so weak. a5, c2, d5, f5, f3. I mean, I'm running out of breath just naming all of these weaknesses.
Opening disaster for Eric Geisy. I think he's already lost. I mean, positionally lost. You pointed out all the weaknesses, but we didn't point out the strengths, because I don't see any strengths in White's position. There's no counterplay. When you're fighting back, when you're challenging your opponent, you need to be able to put on pressure. But where are the pressure points? d6 and a6 are somewhat loose, but White can't access those squares. And here the center falls. Yep. The knight is still on a1. The knight on d5 is looking at a great square potentially on
this
f4,
is hopeless.
On e3. 5 minutes and a half clock advantage for Jan Nepomniachtchi, and he's really looking to equalize with Black right here.
I was even looking at a move like b3 here. Rook takes c4, pawn takes on c2, looking to queen, and then maybe knight e3 at the end.
Amon.
But that's the thing. The position is so good that we're at the point you can consider stuff like that.
But it might work.
Yeah, it might force like knight b4 or something that, you know,
well, we
just
can't
be
afford to
winning.
go down 2 pawns. And
okay, he's kind of done the exact same idea in a different way, but look, he's got that. Oh, beautiful. He's got that
on g2, knight e3. It's the same idea, the same geometry that you mentioned.
Wow.
Nepo finds it. We know what he thrives in. And
wow.
What a victory to equalize the match.
And just how quickly he did it. He's got 7 minutes at the end of the game. It looked effortless. We talked about the positions that he thrives in, and wow, he just took control of that game early, and to be honest, he made it look easy. We saw some good games from Arjun to start the match, but is this a momentum swinger?
This is a momentum swinger. We spoke about Nepo's strengths. We saw when he has the advantage, when he puts on pressure, he's fast, he converts well, he finds those tactics. Look how long it took him to find the game-winning variation, but this is exactly what you don't want to allow when you're playing Nepo, and it didn't take a lot.
No.
When we ask what went wrong in the opening for Arjun, Nepo played this knight f6 move, which is innocuous. It's a standard move. I'm just developing my knight, and all of a sudden, White was in a world of hurt. That was clearly a big opening mishap from Arjun to give Nepo so much counterplay. He can't afford to do that. And now he's going to be playing black as we enter the 4th game.
Yep. Jan Nepomniachtchi, Aurora Gaming, has the white pieces now. It feels like the entire match kind of shifted there because that's not just a regular loss, Eric. That's a tough loss. That's a tough one to come back from. Your mental feels a little bit shattered. Nepo didn't have a great opening in Game 2, but I don't think it even compares to the disaster of Game 3.
This was not a competitive game whatsoever. There wasn't a single hard decision for Nepo that game. You don't want to ever be in that spot. You're right, the momentum has shifted. This is breathing life into Nepo's match chances. And I think, though, one thing, we missed the opening in Game 2, where Nepo was not doing well. Let's see what changes here. He's probably feeling more comfortable. And you know what's different? Maybe he doesn't feel like he needs to prove something or do something. He doesn't need to go all out so early on, because Arjun has punished him when he's been a little sloppy early on.
And this is what the score does to the decisions early on. It being a tied match right now, you know, the players do not have to go all out. When Nepo was down, you know, 1.5 to half, he probably felt like absolutely he needs to win. He needs to do something. But now he can relax a little bit. There is Armageddon in the event of a tie. So if we have a draw in this match, we will go to Armageddon, Eric, which means that he looks like he's playing a bit more comfortably. Early on, we can see an opening that's come from the Catalan.
Yeah, Nepo has well, both of these players, they play everything. But we're not repeating the Sicilian from Game 2. That went really poorly for White. Early on, pressure already. Is this within theory? Yes. But if you're in black shoes here, you're playing Arjun, I have to contain that bishop on G2. Because White has the bishop pair early on. What's the compensation? That's the question. Are you giving White just a bishop pair and not winning a pawn or anything back? It's looking like that right now, and then I'm already favoring White's position. I like Nepo's position. If he wants, he can simply play pawn to E3, castle, and he has a future push where eventually that E3 pawn will push to E4, but White has time. That bishop on G2 is a great piece. All I need now, I want a castle, I want to place my knight on C3, and I don't think Arjun likes that, and he's played H5. A bit counterintuitive when you're playing against the bishop pair. Does it really favor you to open up the position? Let's see how aggressive he's willing to go, because in my eyes, feels like White is in a better spot for the position opening up.
Completely agree. I mean, this is definitely nowhere near the opening disaster we just saw, but I will say that this is a very comfortable position for Nepo. He has everything you could ask for from the opening. I won't say that it's only a 2-result game, because we have a long way to go, especially with this move, long castle from Arjun. He's definitely indicating some intentions on the king side. He's saying, okay, castle, king side, if you dare. So I wonder what Nepo is going to do with his king.
F5 is an interesting move, and I like it. The purpose of it is you want to discourage White from playing E4. If White ever pushes a pawn to E4, Black will take, and yes, Black's E6 pawn is weak, but then White's D4 pawn will be weak. So Nepo probably isn't looking to play E4. He's playing moves like Rook C1, maintaining flexibility. But seeing the way Arjun's playing this opening, he's playing very provocatively.
Very.
What does that tell me? If Nepo castles kingside, look for Black to play G5.
Yep. That move, it might happen even if he doesn't. But you know what? After that last move by Nepo, Rook to C1, that indicates that he can no longer castle on the queen side here. So either the king is staying in the middle, or it will have to castle kingside. I can imagine, you know, maybe a move like A3, B4, knight A4 to C5 is another idea, but it does feel like Nepo's in this kind of no man's land at the moment, Eric, because he doesn't want to castle. He sees the aggression from Arjun, but if you don't castle, you're also at risk in the center.
And that's the E5 move, played immediately. When the knight was on C3, E5 wasn't possible. There's too much pressure on D5. Now E5 is playable, and if you take on E5, you allow that knight on C6, it's taking on E5, hitting the queen, and the D file is opening up, and White's not ready yet for the whole middle to open up. He hasn't chosen to castle. Great response by Arjun.
Yeah, I'm surprised by knight A4. You know, without castling, without having that move in, knight A4 is very provocative, and Arjun has been playing in that style the entire game. He's waiting to get a move like E5 in, a move like G5, and in this case, it is perfectly timed in the center. Eric, it's difficult to react to. Yes, you can play knight c5, but things are falling apart, and your king in the middle means that when the e-pawn captures on d4, you have to watch out on the e-file.
Not only that, when e takes d4, the e-file opens up, and there's just a long-term weakness on d4, an isolated pawn. Yes, white has the bishop pair, but black seems to be very active and very happy despite that. Arjun playing aggressively, finding the right moves. Nepo has slowed down, as I said. Not every player is like this, but when Jan starts slowing down, there's a couple options. Maybe he's looking for the kill, or he's uncomfortable. In this case, he's uncomfortable. He just had an opening advantage, and it's completely disappeared.
It has.
By giving up your best piece, that bishop on g2, that's not a good thing.
And knight c3 here is the move that makes the most sense. But you know what could happen, Eric? Knight c3, rook back to d7. If you take on e5, which looks like one of the only moves, the knight recaptures, and immediately knight d3 is a huge problem because knight d3 also comes with potentially knight takes on f2 afterwards.
Yeah, look at white's dark squared bishop. Black also has one, and black has their pawns on light squares. Feels like black is better suited for light square play right now. And what's the compensation? You're playing white, you're supposed to play for advantage. To me, black is comfortably equalized, and the play will revolve around the d-file. King e2 is a good move. I don't see a great response margin here that will really press white. But at the end of the day, we're not talking about an advantage for Nepo anymore. It's how you can stabilize and catch up in development and equalize again.
Exactly.
When you have Nepo on the back foot, you're doing well. Arjun is doing well right now.
Yeah, bishop f6. We have, you know, pawns on light squares, h5, f5 for Arjun. And all those dark square pawns on the king side, it's tough to advance them at the moment. We're probably going to see moves like, of course, rook to d1. But, you know, with knight d3 still there, I think he was concerned. So he plays rook c2. Maybe if knight c4, he can drop the bishop back to c1. And for now, knight d3 is not as impactful. It's still a great move, but you know it doesn't come with an initial threat.
Yeah, I think this is still fairly close to equal, but from the position we had, that's an accomplishment for Eric Gaisi. The question, I think he's going to spend time the next couple of moves because he recognizes that Nepo isn't too far away from completing development.
Yep.
That rook on h1 needs to join the game. Is white active? No, but he can't ask for everything. Just needs to get that rook into the game and watch out for any threats from Arjun. What would a threat be? Maybe knight b4. Maybe knight b4 and a2 is loose in some lines. Nepo plays knight a4, covering the b4 square. Maybe in the future I'm going to swing my rook from h1 to b1, but there's a threat. Once again, knight takes f2. After you double the rooks, there's a knight takes f2 on the board right now. How will Nepo respond?
And playing a move like rook d1 also walks you into a potential pin on the d-file. You could never move your bishop because of knight f4 check. So you have to be very careful how you choose to defend this. Yes, rook f1 is possible, but I'm going to start thinking about moves like potentially even b5, Eric. Like, I think you can really start to get aggressive here with the position. Pawn to c5, pawn to b5. I think Arjun has a lot to play for.
You're right. Well, b5 is a threat. b5, if knight c5, I can trade. d2's loose. b5, if knight c3, I have knight b4, and the rook on c2 has no squares in the second rank, so d2's loose. So I see threats on f2. I see your b5 move. Big think required here. He's played bishop c3. I looked at this, and I was looking at bishop takes c3 Amon, because if rook takes c3, I thought there might be knight takes b2 with a tactic.
Yep, that is a great move.
But if you
means the knight has to take back,
If you take back with a knight, I have knight b4.
And rook d2
Rook d2
happens
is coming.
anyway.
But then the only other move is pawn takes.
Yeah.
But pawn takes is you're weakening your pawn structure.
It's a concession.
It's a concession.
It is, and I think that might have to be played as we've kind of gone through all the options here, and Arjun will have no doubt done the exact same. He captures, and Nepo pawn takes c3 looks absolutely required here. It would be a huge mistake, Eric, if he took with anything other than the b pawn here.
I'm surprised he hasn't recaptured right away. There we have it. Arjun with about 70 seconds more on the clock, and he's doing very well. But at the end of the day, material's even. Nepo is a tremendous fighter. Can Arjun continue to find ways to restrict Nepo? That's a key to the match. Don't give him tactics. Don't give him counterplay. This is game 4. So as black, I'm very happy to steer this towards a 2-result position. 2-result position, I want to be up on the clock, and I want a better pawn structure. I want to maintain that. If I fall behind on the clock versus Nepo, he's scored so many wins like that in his career.
Yep, absolutely. c5. Now, there's an idea to play c4 to support the knight, but you also just want to maybe play c5 and then b6 next. The knight can always drop back to e5. I think b6 to support the pawns makes a lot of sense here. You can start to bring the king up, king c7, king c6. It feels like Arjun can improve his position with more moves than Nepo can, but look out for c4 because it has one idea. Yes, it gives up the b4 square, Eric, but maybe Nepo wants to play a3 and bring that knight on a4 to c3 and into d5.
One thing to look at when we have a position like this that's not fully equal or symmetrical. Why? Black has 3 pawns on the queen side versus 2. White has 4 pawns on the king side versus 3. Which side will use their majority and gain space with that? It looks right now that you mentioned a plan for Black. Bring that king into c6. Maybe then I'll play a6, b5, start pushing you back. Nepo, it's not very easy to push the pawns on the king side with those rooks on the d file. If you play f3, it feels like you're weakening e3, f3, g3, if that's the only other move. So he's playing passive moves. He doesn't feel comfortable going for anything yet. But rook b1, I wonder what that's threatening. I mean, it doesn't have to threaten something. I guess one idea when the king is on b8 is the knight ever moves for Black. Knight takes c5 is an idea.
Yep.
This might be a perfect moment to play king c7.
And I actually was looking at the move a3. I really liked a3 just to never have to deal with knight b4. It didn't feel like Black was threatening anything immediately. So I was liking a3, knight c3, and then maybe knight d5 or leave the knight on c3. So we have to deal with knight b4 now.
The issue with this a3 move where I said knight d5 in the future is if Black gets their king on c6 and maybe you find a way to get your knight on d5, Black will have this idea of taking on c4.
Yep.
And that knight will always be loose. I know this is far off, but it's not the most stable outpost because c4 is weak.
That's right. Unfortunately now, not only do you not have a3, you don't have knight c3. I'm concerned now for Nepo's position in a very real way. Rook d3 played from Arjun. I think he's starting to...
That's a fantastic
He's turning
move.
this into a serious advantage. Rook a3 traps the knight, wins the knight. What do you do about it? You almost have to play rook b3, Eric, but
allowing rook
then rook
d2?
d2.
No, allowing rook d2, that's a full pawn and I get command of the second rank?
Well, how do you stop rook a3? You have to play like rook c1 and try to play knight back to c3. So I feel like rook c1 is probably the move, but then rook a3, knight d3.
Yeah, rook c1, rook a3, knight c3, knight d3 is winning, I think.
I think it's just winning.
For
Because
Nepo's
even the
shaking.
rook on c1 hangs with check.
Do you know what he just did? I think he just pressed arrows on his keyboard. It looks like he went back to see what he played. I could be wrong. I saw some hand movement, but it looked almost like he was wondering, what did I just do?
What did he
I didn't
just
like
do?
rook b1 whatsoever, and he committed further. He played rook b2, and he's out of moves right now.
Yep.
Nepo is such a resourceful player. He needs to
But the
find
resources
something
have to
here.
be there. You can't find something that's not there. Rook d3 is calm, cool, collected. He's up 2+ minutes on the clock. And Eric, I don't see an answer to rook a3. The only way to keep material is to allow rook d2.
You want to sack the exchange sometimes, but it's not even a good exchange because you can't take back on b4. Rook b4, c b4. If you take back, I have rook d2 and I pick off a2 anyways. White's not even getting any sort of material recovery in those lines. Rook a3 is a threat. I think, Amon, you're right. Rook b3 has to be played, but we're staring at a lost position.
That's terrible.
Nepo's at 2.5 minutes. He just banged the table.
It's terrible.
No, I'm pretty sure he's using the arrows. I'm looking at his camera. He's thinking, how
did I allow this to happen?
this with White? This is game 4. I've put my opponent under no pressure, and my knight's about to be trapped. Rook a3, hitting the knight. It has to go to c3. It all comes down. Does knight d3 work? Wow. Knight takes b2, rook takes d8, king
Okay.
c7. No, he just takes it.
So if knight c1, he wants to take that. So he's actually won the knight back with rook d2. He's pinned it to the rook on d8. But he's facing, I was going to say, rook c2. And Eric, he's just going to lose so many pawns. But, you know, I credit Nepo for finding a variation.
It's a variation, but the reason he hesitated going into this is he realizes he can try to pick off some kingside pawns, but he's staring at 3 connected queenside passers.
Yeah, it's lost.
His king is on f3. It's not even a position that he feels like he can trick his opponent. He didn't play this quickly. This was reluctantly.
Yep. I think he'll throw some checks in. Okay, we'll see b5, I assume, from...
You could potentially...
You could just keep pushing.
Arjun has a couple of minutes. He's looking for more.
And it's not even close in terms of a race. Even though he grabbed 1 pawn on f5 there, look at the white pawns, e3, f2. They are not even close to making a
So
threat.
you just push the pawn to c2 and push the other pawn to b3, right?
I think so.
Look at Nepo's body language. He knows resignation is coming.
He knows it's lost.
Arjun needs to find a move, and there's many winning moves here.
He has 4 minutes to find it, Eric. He's managed the clock perfectly. It's been just a brilliant game. He's chosen this. This looks like it'll be enough.
Pawn goes to b5. The pawn's going to push down the board. Push and push.
Yeah, you can't even play rook b5 to win it because you have to watch the c1 square. The c pawn will become a queen. This is it, Eric.
The rook is coming to a1.
That's it.
And that's it.
Wow, Arjun Erigaisi, Gen G defeats Jan Nepomniachtchi from Aurora Gaming, and Jan has been eliminated. Eric, what a turnaround after what looked like a momentum shift in Game 3.
What a turnaround. He took his chance.
Truly, truly impressive, a deserved winner, and actually, you know, our first winner here in the quarterfinals. Eric, he moves on to the semifinals with an incredible performance. Honestly, you know, out of those 4 games, he played better in the large majority of them. He kind of had that blip in Game 3. We didn't like that game from him at all. An easy win for Nepomniachtchi, but he turned it right back around.
He turned it right back around, and Nepo is, you know, he's still thinking, how did that happen? I lost my games with white, and it comes down to one move in Game 4. He played a lazy move. Arjun is such a sharp player. Punished him immediately, and we have one of our first semifinalists.
Exactly right. Arjun Erigaisi, he is through. Absolutely huge for Gen G as well, Eric. And, you know, you start to think about what this means in the competition. You're really progressing forward now, single elimination. So these matches mean absolutely everything to the players and their esports orgs.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we had their fans show up here. What are esports teams looking for? They're looking to get a world champion in all these different categories. Chess is one of them. In order to win the Esports World Cup, you need to have a world champion. That's one of the conditions. So Gen G has a player in the semifinals. That's huge.
Yeah, it really is. And we see a 2.5 to 1.5 victory. It did look like there was a potential that maybe things would just even up, go to Armageddon, a tied match. But Arjun with the black pieces, Eric, it's really impressive, the kind of style that he has. He never feels like, oh, he has the black pieces, so he's going for a draw. And we have James Canty with the winner of that match, Arjun Erigaisi.
And we're here with Arjun Erigaisi, the winner of today's match. Congratulations on the match, Arjun. Take us through your thoughts today with the 4-game match.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a tough, close match. In the first game, I was pushing, but I missed my chances. But okay, he also defended well. He played fast and also played pretty accurately on the board. The second game, I played quite well. Third game was a disaster. Yeah, I don't know. I think the fact that I was up in the match sort of affected me, like in the sense I was unable to decide if I should play it safe or play it normally. And yeah, in the process, I ended up playing passively, and it cost me. But okay, I'm happy I won the 4th game.
With 4 games being the match, what was did you have a strategy going in today, especially facing Jan as strong as he is?
I didn't have any strategy as such, but I was happy that there are 4 games because when it's 2 games, if you have one bad game, it's already a tough situation. So yeah, I was happy about 4 games.
How do you feel confidence-wise? You made it so far as with your matches and winning this far. So is there anything for your confidence? Does that do anything? How do you feel?
Yeah, after today's match, I feel pretty confident. I think in most of the games I had control, like in 3 out of the 4 games I was pushing, so I have reasons to be confident.
Congratulations and good luck to you, Arjun. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you very much, James, for the wonderful interview with our winner, Arjun Erigaisi, who is going to be going through to the semifinals. I mean, that was a crazy, crazy match. Arjun won both of his games with black. What do you make of this, Benjamin?
Yeah, very up and down match. I mean, the first game was a pretty, quiet draw. Then he managed to win with the black pieces, like you mentioned, in a sharp Sicilian. Then Nepo struck back with the black pieces in the night of. I thought like maybe the match was going to shift in Nepo's momentum in his favor, but that was not at all the case. Arjun struck back again with the black pieces and won the match, and he's already moving on to the semifinals.
Moving on to the semifinals is huge, as Gen G has a shot at getting that first place, which comes with 250,000, don't forget, but also 1,000 points to the team. I mean, Arjun finding knight to b4, rook d3 had Nepo literally going like this on the table. That was crazy.
Yeah, no, that was really nice find by Arjun, and it was kind of crazy to see, like, the game was still going on, but you could see Nepo going back into the game, like, where did I mess up? But you still have a game to play, like, you should still try to save the game, even though it did look completely lost. And yeah, I also didn't see a way for Nepo to save it. And yes, impressive stuff by Arjun to win.
Nepo certainly didn't find a way to save it in that game, but the games were super interesting. I mean, it was a well-balanced fight from both players.
Yeah, so here we see the final moments of the game. Those queenside passers are just unstoppable, and that is what brought Arjun the win, and Nepo clearly not happy, of course.
Unfortunate, very unfortunate. Well, on that subject of unfortunateness, Nepo is actually out. No more Aurora Gaming in the chess portion at the Esports World Cup.
But who is still here is Arjun Argaisi, aka the Madman, dubbed by Magnus, is what he called him here. As Arjun gets through again, the confidence that's going through this guy, the strength, the stoicness, as you see, he just looks the same. Loss, win, draw, doesn't matter. I look the same. I'm just getting the job done and going home and doing it again the next day. Bak, what are some strengths you think from Arjun that we keep seeing him do in these games?
Yeah, I think really his level-headedness, I mean, even after a loss, he's not thrown off at all. And if he's winning, he's just sitting there cool, calm, and collected in a losing position as well. So I'd say that's a very big strength of him. You can see with the other players, their heartbeat goes up and up and up, but Arjun, he's just chilling, and I feel like that's really what brings him wins in these critical moments.
It was also really interesting to see that, or hear rather, that Arjun perhaps wasn't going full force in that game after he had won already. He was like, you know, maybe I was playing a little too passive. And we've talked about this yesterday about how if you're up in your match, the best way to win your match is not to play for a draw. It's to play for that win, because the draw will come. If you play for a draw, you might end up losing the game, which is what happened. But he did end up prevailing regardless, and will go on to face the winner of Alireza Firuza versus Nordebek.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a close match as well. But yeah, you make a very good point there. I think especially Arjun, I mean, all of the players should stick true to their style. Arjun, he's a very aggressive player. If he starts playing passively, then bad things happen. But we saw in the last game, he played aggressively, and that brought him the win. But I'm very curious to see how he will fare in the semifinals against one of those two you just mentioned.
That's going to be great to see, of course, as we still have more chess coming up, guys. But real quick, from you, Nemo, what do you think Arjun needs to continue doing to keep this pace, this score? He's on fire. He's winning every match. What do I have to keep doing?
Honestly, I have no good words for him, because he's the one that's doing it, not me. He just needs to keep winning. That's all I can say.
Just win.
Just
easy.
win.
Just keep doing what you're doing.
Just keep doing what you're doing.
Guys,
yeah.
It's easy. Just keep winning. We're going to keep winning and take a break, and then we'll be back after this.
This wasn't just about who's the best. It was about who had to win.
This amount of money it's life-changing, not just for them, but everyone that is close to them.
It's crazy. They're so good at a game, they can make millions of dollars. Who are these people?
One win, one chance. For everything they carried with them.
And we are back, guys. Esports World Cup. I hope you guys are ready. There's Hikaru Nakamura with his second, actually, Chris Littlejohn. He comes with him to help him prepare. And then there's Levon Aronian ready to go, of course, as we have another match here, guys. I hope you're ready and excited, especially for the fans at home that love both of these players here. I am FIDE Master James Cantu III here, joined by WGM Nemo and Grandmaster Benjamin Bach. We have another match, don't we?
We do have another match on our hands. This is going to be intense because these players had two very different ways of getting to this stage.
Absolutely, yeah. Levon has been in great shape. He recently won the freestyle event in Las Vegas. And here he has also been very convincing. He made it through the last chance qualifier. And in the group stage, he just won his first two matches, made it to the quarterfinals. Hikaru, on the other hand, had quite a wild ride. He won the first match, lost the second match to Fallujah, and so he had to make it through the decider match. And that was not an easy ride against Wei Yi. He was staring down the barrel of elimination. He was lost in the first game, lost in the second game. The Armageddon was smooth, but it was quite a wild ride for him.
Levon being very hot here, of course, and then Hikaru making it, but sort of shaky in a way. What is Hikaru going to have to do, and what do you think Levon's going to have to do? I'll give it to both of you. What do you think is going to have to happen here? Maybe some shifts before this match starts.
Well, I personally think that both players could, you know, just keep playing what they're currently doing, or maybe one of them is going to take a step, play faster perhaps, put on some more pressure, as we are going to have Levon playing white first.
Yeah, curious what we will have out of the opening. And here we see Hikaru Nakamura from Team Falcons. We saw that Team Falcons pretty high up the standings. They're definitely looking to put some points on the scoreboard here, as they not only have Hikaru, they also have Alireza Firouzja.
In fact, Alireza Firouzja is the one that made Hikaru, put Hikaru in this current spot. Alireza already through to the quarterfinals as well. will be playing the winner of our previous match, Nepo versus Arjun, which was Arjun. But now we also are going to see Levon from Team Reject play against, you know, the second Team Falcons superstar.
Yeah, no, that'll be exciting. And yeah, what does Hikaru need to do? I mean, obviously, Hikaru always is one of the pre-tournament favorites, and this format generally favors him. I mean, he's really good in Rapid, of course, but the no increment perhaps gives him even more of an advantage. He said yesterday in an interview, I'm perhaps not as fast as I once was, but he still feels he's faster than most of the players here, especially when they get below 1 minute.
And they're off, so we will let the casters have it.
That's right. We're going to let the casters come in. It is game time as the players are already off here. Guys, hope you're ready for today's match with Hikaru Nakamura versus Levon Aronian. We're going to bring in Grandmaster Iman Hamilton and Grandmaster Eric Hansen. Yo, let's go, boys.
Thank you, James. We are getting set for what will be the most exciting match, Eric, of the day. We're already underway. Levon Aronian, Team Reject, Hikaru Nakamura, Team Falcons, and an opening right here that, you know, maybe for some of the fans, they haven't got their exposure to the Berlin, Eric.
Yeah, the Berlin is often featured in classical chess. Vladimir Kramnik used it to defeat Garry Kasparov in his only World Championship match loss. It's known to be a drawing weapon, but what we know about this time format is there aren't many draws. You can have an equal position and the clock is a factor. Maybe Hikaru's also showing some respect to Levon in the sense, you know, let's start off slow. Levon's been doing really well. He's heating up this summer. He's had great results. Wants to see how he's playing, get a feel for the pace, start things slow.
Exactly, and this, you know, we've seen some of the up-and-comers, the younger players in the event. Eric, these are some of the seasoned veterans that we have at the top of chess. A4, A5, I have to admit, I've seen quite a few Berlins. I haven't seen too many that feature A4, A5 by white.
Well, if Levon is entering the Berlin, because it's not a forced opening, he has to have an idea.
Right.
The opening has such a reputation. Black is okay, solid. Black has the bishop pair, and it's hard to break. If it's hard to break in a 7-hour game with top preparation, the top players in history, in a 10-minute game, it also will be hard to break. At the same time, if you have small ideas, Hikaru might not have the time to try to remember all the lines, all the variations. We'll see if this pays off. I have to also say, going into this match, I felt like a Levon, he's playing really well. His qualification was pretty straightforward. Hikaru, meanwhile, he made it to the quarterfinals. We all know about his prowess in these time controls, but we can't say he's been playing his best chess yet. And I think yet's the key word, because when the lights are bright, he often finds his form.
Exactly right. You know, he had, you know, a few difficult moments, especially yesterday against Wei Yi, but he's made it through, and that's the thing with these top players. If they make it through, it's not like their form is, you know, the exact same the entire way. Form is temporary, and that can change when he rises to the occasion. Knight d5 has just been played. If the knight captures, of course, the pawns will undouble. So, you know, it's not usually a desirable move, but Eric, there is some idea that you want to exchange and then maybe try to play to exchange the dark squared bishops. If that can happen, you know, you could try to play on the dark squares against Black's light squared bishop, but, you know, normal understanding is not to take and undouble those pawns.
No, you take, undouble those pawns, that bishop on c8 slides over to f5. It's easy to find yourself in a bad position as white. I'm curious to see what Levon chooses here, because there's already a big decision. You really don't want to allow Hikaru to take on c3, double those pawns, unless there's compensation. And where's the compensation? At the same time, when Levon plays a4, a5, the way he's been playing the past month, I have to believe he has some ideas. He's going to put some pressure here.
Do you think he's maybe just not prepared for this knight d5 move? Because he's really invested some time. He has, in fact, traded, and I think what we might see is a real fight for the dark squares here. That a4, a5 move, a little bit of a claim to the b6 square, which in turn gives you a bit more claim to the c5 square. If the move c5 is not played now, Eric, we could see a position where maybe white plays c3, b4, takes over all those dark squares, and that's the position I was talking about earlier, where the goal would be to trade the dark square bishops. So that makes me think, Eric, that c5 is a critical move right now for Hikaru to consider.
I'm looking at c5. It's critical. If you can achieve c5 and then develop, Black's talking about having an advantage. Just castling, 2 bishops, open position, better for Black. I'm curious about the move you mentioned. c3, it prevents Black from grabbing more space with d4. What I really think it sets up is in the future some idea connected to pawn to b4. It has to work. The timing has to work out. But if you don't play a move like b4 in the future, where's White's push? Where's White's play?
Yeah, exactly right. If you don't play b4, that's a great question. Where does the knight on f3 go? Can't move to d4. Black will probably play h6, so it also can't really move to the g5 square. You know, what is actually going to happen here? I think it all revolves around b4, because b4 also brings the pawn away from c5 and gives the pieces access to the d4 square. So Eric, even at the cost of a pawn, b4, pawn takes b4, pawn takes back. If the bishop captures, you can try to play rook b1, go after the b7 pawn. So I definitely think that this entire setup from Levon is connected to the move b4.
It has to be. Black gets the castle, play moves like h6, bishop e7. Black will be better. It's simply an open position and a good bishop pair. Something immediate has to occur here for Levon for any chance of an advantage or pressure. But I'm looking at the clock. He's spending a lot of time. It indicates to me he's treating his position as it's one of the first times he's seen it, and he has to solve the problems himself. Knight e1, Amon, that connects with our ideas. Knight d3 and b4. But it's hard to imagine that White has a serious pressure here.
Yeah, I agree. I do understand the move knight e1, knight d3, especially because we were considering b4 and it looked like a great move as a sacrifice. If you can achieve it maybe not as a sacrifice, this could be great. The a7 pawn is also loose. I know it feels like a sideline pawn. You're not really considering winning an a pawn, but Eric, after knight d3, b4, you might have to spend a move playing a6 as Hikaru. That's a move that you won't have later.
And knight d3 is coming, and you don't want to play the move c4 as black. Does it take away d3 from the knight? Yes. But what does it relinquish? The d4 square. And then the knight can maybe move over to c2, hop on d4. Also, the a7 pawn is hanging, so that's the first issue. But just talking about square control, the ideal, the harmonious setup for Hikaru is maintaining pawns on c5 and d5. They cover b4, c4, d4, e4. It makes it very hard for Levon to encroach in black's position.
Yeah, and we've talked about this c5 square, c5 pawn. The reason that it can't just be easily supported by b6 is because the pawn on a5, he set that up so long ago in the opening, Eric. The pawn can capture on b6, open up the rook on a1. There's going to be a lot of play all of a sudden. The one thing I love about Levon's position, and that Hikaru might be uncomfortable with, is that Levon is playing with a clear plan. It's allowing him to switch that time disadvantage completely the other way. Now he's up a minute, and he's playing very intentionally, Eric. His last 3-4 moves have all been part of the exact same plan.
Yeah, I've been very impressed by Levon's chess. I think everyone has been. He's not, some people might think he's, more inexperienced, or at least before the last month in these online formats, but he's shown his level, and we don't see him in situations where he's in massive, massive time trouble. It was very, very practical for him to find this plan without expending too much time on the clock. Takes away a lot of Hikaru's firepower, because if you find yourself down a minute against Hikaru, that's the danger zone.
Okay, well, let's see what Hikaru can do here. He's played a6. That pawn was attacked. I actually mentioned that move earlier as a bit of an annoyance for black, because you know that at some point you're going to have to spend time moving it. We could see bishop or knight to c5 here. And if those dark square bishops exchange, which is exactly why he's played bishop c5, I think the knight coming into c5 will make a big difference. So I'd like the position for Levon, but Hikaru, one of the most resourceful players in chess, is definitely not going to go down easy here.
At least when I see bishop c5, it indicates Levon is pressing or looking to press. He could have played knight c5. That allows opposite bishops, maybe more drawing chances. Bishop c5, you envision a future where you remove the bishop from e7, plant your knight on c5, and all your pawns are mainly on dark squares, so you know that bishop on e6, the remaining bishop for black, can target it. The question is it enough? Also, keep in mind that d pawn for black, is it a pass pawn? Yes, it's also an isolated pawn. Maybe Levon in the future wants to trade the dark square bishops, place the knight on c5, and then double the rooks in the d file, trying to get easy pressure. You see rook d8.
I like this move from Hikaru. It's actually because now if you take on e7 and maybe try knight to c5, I'm looking at positions where you can almost sneak that d pawn in. Like if you play d4 as black, you kind of free the position up a little bit. So I think the rook is going to be well placed here. I'm actually surprised, Eric, that we haven't seen bishop captures e7 and knight c5 played already.
d4 is a big move. It's something Hikaru's striving for. It has the benefit of using the d-pawn to fight against white's initiative. Also, it opens up that bishop on e6 that's blocked by the d5 pawn right now. Hikaru, like most players here, very active defender. Is this the most active position? No, but with rook d8, he indicates he'd like to use the d-pawn in the future.
There's a big reason why I wanted to take on e7 earlier, maybe instead of h3, Eric, because I wanted to play knight c5 and then rook d4. That would guard the b-pawn, block the d-pawn, and really cement the control of the dark squares. Right now, I don't feel that we quite have that, so I think Hikaru, and we can see it reflected on the clock, while he may not be back in terms of an advantage, I think that he is defending, as you said, very actively and finding a way to make this position difficult.
f4 supports e5, and in the future, Levon might consider the move g4. g4, if you can then push f5, things are great. Black's not going to allow that, but it will restrict the bishop. You play g4 and you can pull it off. That bishop on e6 can't find a diagonal on f5, then that commits black more to this d4 idea, freeing up the bishop that way. Levon not panicking here, but as you said, Hikaru doing a good job, not panicking, and we see the move h5.
Yeah.
I like it. Standard Berlin move, preventing g4, and just preventing Levon from getting easy moves that grab real estate for free.
I like this move a lot. I'm still, okay, this is a big moment, knight c5. I do think that this is that d4 moment, but it comes with a price, right? The b7 pawn is hanging, but of course, Hikaru sees right through that. There are many ways to continue the position. Rook b8,
That's
the b4 pawn is hanging. He has found the right moment for this move, and I think, Eric, without d4, rook d4 would have been played by Levon.
Yeah, rook d4 has so many benefits for white, but Hikaru understands what Levon's striving for. It's very clear what white's plan was playing on the dark squares. Finally, with the move d4, you control some dark squares, you take them away, but the question is, how do you defend d4 if white doubles on the d-file?
That's a great question. Yeah, you could play a move like bishop to f5 and try to play d3, maybe with some mass exchanges, and then the rook from c6 could slide to c4 afterwards with attacking the f4 pawn and the b4 pawn. This maybe is a similar idea. The rook can come to d4, Eric. b4 and f4 are both attacked, which makes me think rook takes d3 is kind of the move that prevents that.
Rook takes d3 prevents it, but you mentioned you trade everything off. That rook on c6, once the knight vacates that square, slides over to c4, where it puts pressure on f4 and b4, and it's a tough ask for white to maintain that.
I do think that bishop takes e7, knight c5, and rook d4 earlier by Levon was a big moment missed. And now we're in a position where the activity from black is telling the tale. He's up a minute. We do see this move. I think Hikaru's going to go right for that. Takes and rook c4. There's an idea of bishop to f5 in order to hit that knight. Levon's dropping one of these pawns. I think at minimum, black is making a draw here, Eric. And I think Hikaru can look for more.
Yeah, it depends which pawn you lose. If you lose the f4 pawn, e5 is critically weak. And remember, bishops can be better than knights in these open positions with pawns on both sides of the board. So it's a position that might have looked okay or even promising, but now I think Levon has to be very careful. He's down a minute on the clock, and Hikaru has an active position. This is what he thrives. He thrives here. If rook b1, there's bishop f5. No matter where the rook goes, you're saying bishop f5 is coming, and how do you hold on to everything? Because then rook d4 comes in, f4, b4.
Exactly.
And white's king is on g1. Black's king is on e7. Even in some king and pawn endgames, black's king might be there first.
Yep, it could get to the action first. And let's not forget, we haven't really seen that pure flag today in the quarterfinals. We are in that territory. It's almost a 2-minute time advantage. I can see a reality where the bishop goes to f5, trades for the knight, the rook takes back, Hikaru wins one of the pawns, and we get to some sort of rook endgame. That can go a long time. And I can actually see a reality where he plays for a win on the clock.
For sure. Bishop f5 right now.
Yep, bishop f5. You have to hit that knight, I think. Knight to f2. I mean, dealer's choice. Which pawn do you grab?
I'm looking to play h4 if I can. I would love to fix f4 as a weakness. Is there time to play? He doesn't need to do it. I just wasn't sure if Levon was going for a g4 move.
Right, because rook c7 was there. So if you play h4, rook takes f4, rook c7, rook takes b7 was in the air. So of course he takes the b pawn to defend his own. You can play king e8, king e6 here. Yes, there's g4 in the position for Levon. That's probably going to be the next move. You do have to watch the f7 pawn.
Bishop d7. The idea, you can sometimes play king d8, and that rook can't stay on the 7th rank, and then you find a configuration where you can target a5, f4 is loose. So again, clock is a really, really big factor here. I don't want to name names, but I spoke to someone very strong yesterday, and he said, you know what, I think Hikaru's a favorite in this match. He's the quicker player. It's going to come down to that. That's what I was told. This could be an example.
Exactly. I'm looking at knight d3. If the knight goes to d3 into c5, clearly, that would be a huge achievement. But there is going to be a rook b1 check, right? You can throw that in. He can play king d8, right, to get out, and then the bishop can come to c6, and slowly improving that position. You can target more pawns. Rook b5.
I want to play h4 when I have an opportunity. h4, I want to fix those pawns on g2 and h3 and weaken f4 because it takes away white's ability in the future in some positions to play g3. But the question is, maybe rook b5 first. It's all about timing here. Hikaru's looking for an advantage. He's pressing this because from my perspective, I don't see much risk for black. I think white is under tremendous pressure already.
Huge pressure. Even though the actual evaluation might be around equal here, you can see Hikaru posturing up in his chair. This is where he thrives. He's up on time, and he knows he's in a position he can push. h4, your idea. Bishop f5, rook b5. There are so many different ways. He just needs to elongate the game because he's a much faster player than Levon Aronian.
Completely right. Prolong the game, and if Levon finds himself under 30 seconds, he can no longer even think. He just has to move.
Yep, so rook c3, of course, if the bishop captures on d3, you take back with a check. He probably doesn't want to pull the trigger on that just yet. But I do think if we were 30, 40 seconds less on the clock, he would be interested in playing a rook endgame because in some ways you think of that as almost a guaranteed flag.
I'm wondering if Hikaru's worried that rook b5, there's knight c5, and how do you unravel? But we have h4 is such a good move.
Key move. You've been talking about that one for a while.
Because now white's structure on the king side isn't good. You can't generate a passed pawn easily, and if black ever wins a5, look at those connected passed pawns to win the game.
Okay, so how do we make progress here? King e7, so at least if you want, you can capture on a5 now, but what will follow is knight b7, rook c7, knight d6.
No need to commit. I might even play g6 here. I might just chill g6. Levon is the one who has to keep finding accurate moves and active counterplay, and he's running out of those moves. Oh, I love h5.
And he expected it. Hikaru completely expected this. There's nothing worse when you only have a minute on the clock. He's completely expecting everything he's doing.
Is there a tactic here? Can you go for the king? Is there a mating net? Something on the back rank? I'm searching. Amon, can you go rook b1? What happens after rook b1? If king h4, rook check, and then you have rook h3? What do you do after rook b1?
And he's
That's
thinking
a mating net.
Rook b1, rook b2, they both seem to accomplish the same thing. Why is Hikaru spending time here when he could capture? He knows something is up.
Bishop dominates white's knight. They can't even bring the knight to defend on the h file. Hikaru's shaking his head. Does that mean he doesn't see it? He's down to a minute 20.
What do you even do there? Why is that? I don't see a way to prevent it.
It's just weird to look for a mate when it was never there. He misses it, and Levon is back in the game.
He is right back in it, and time was spent there. He misses what looked like an absolute win, stone cold on the spot. We're back in an even position here. He's going to recapture that pawn on e5.
Take on e5, then I can take on a5 though, and e5 falls. All Hikaru needs is pieces on the board.
So hang on, is f5 being considered?
Yes.
Just because of that. Yes, f5, f6. This is going to get very interesting because the knight can slide back maybe to d3, open up rook c7, knight takes e5. I still think that Hikaru has the edge here. He's up a pawn temporarily.
Levon needs to speed up here.
Knight a4. That move feels wrong. It's on the side of the board, but it does have an idea.
There's some discover checks, and look at that bishop on d5. It covers f7. It just cuts off a lot of the board. Hikaru's looking at e4, bishop e3, plenty of options, but he is slowing down. I think that means he's looking for a win.
Knight b6 is coming next. He goes e4. Watch out. There's a big threat of moving that bishop away. King g6 makes the most sense, but he comes back king f4. No, king f4 can't be right, Eric.
Hikaru goes for activity. If the rook slides on the f-file.
But the bishop can go nicely to the c6 square. The f-pawn is no longer a problem.
Yes, bishop c6, and there's stability. Levon is down 10 seconds. Where's the counterplay here?
He's playing bishop e6 to cover all the squares.
I think he's going to take that. You can't go king d5. Yes.
I think he's going to take that. This was why he played bishop e6 to cover all the squares the knight could move to. 30 seconds apiece here.
King d5. King e5. He wants to push that e-pawn.
Even better. He's threatening also to take on f6, also to give a check, rook g1. I mean, you give a check,
Levon
rook
needs to speed
c5,
up.
but king e6 is coming. He's down on the clock. He's down on the board. I don't see a way out of
King
this.
e6 is a fantastic move. Where are the...
There's no rook c6 check.
He can afford... Oh.
And now the white king is cut off from the e-pawn.
Levon's going to place his rook on b6 if he has an opportunity.
He's up a lot. And the thing is, Hikaru doesn't need to win in normal fashion anymore. This is going to be a flag. Can Hikaru Nakamura and Team Falcons do it?
Levon under 10 seconds.
He can't play king b3, watch out. Even if white wins that pawn, it doesn't matter. Oh, this is a tough
Levon
position.
down to 6. He's going to need a miracle here.
This is looking like a flag. Hikaru Nakamura. 4 seconds for Levon Aronian. Oh my goodness!
Oh my goodness!
I
What a
can't believe
blunder.
it! He could even lose this game.
2 seconds. Can Levon pull it off?
Oh my
God. He has to cut the king off.
He's not able to do it. I don't think this will be a checkmate. He's just not able to do it. Oh my goodness, that almost turned completely around. A draw at the end of the day. Eric, probably the most thrilling draw we've ever seen. It looked like, you know, Hikaru Nakamura, that's exactly where he thrives. He's flagged that position so many times. I can't believe he didn't pull it off here.
Amon, I've probably lost to Hikaru in that situation, like 100 out of 100 opportunities. He was up on the clock. There was no risk. He even had time to, he didn't even need to take risk to achieve that flag. And Levon, you know, credit to him, he didn't pre-move that. Because if he was in pre-move mode, he wouldn't have caught it. And
he would have missed it.
We even saw yesterday, Wei Yi versus Nakamura. Wei Yi had a similar tactic, didn't find it against Hikaru, which kept his chances alive. What a save by Levon Aronian.
And that is Levon saving a point or a half point in a position where we can say he knows he's the underdog. That's a weakness for him. So for him to show up in that time scramble, 20 seconds to 5 seconds, that's amazing for his confidence going forward. Hikaru was not able to pull off that flag.
It's all about recovering now if you're in Hikaru's shoes. He knows that was a free point, and we're still at a tied match.
And let's not forget, Eric, if Levon had a bit more experience in maybe that checkmating pattern, it's possible to pull off. I know it sounds crazy with 2 seconds, but he had that king boxed in. So that's a different story, but that would have been insane to flip it around entirely.
We're headed straight to game 2. Hikaru has the white pieces here.
The adrenaline has to be high after that game. Your heart is pumping after a tense time scramble where it probably flipped in his heart so many times. I'm winning, I'm losing, I'm drawing. It's hard to tell. So the players are just trying to calm down and focus on game number 2. At the end of the day, it sounds like, you know, just mayhem, but it was a draw.
It was a draw. You see the body language. Hikaru's still shaking his head a little bit. But at the end of the day, he's a veteran. He's won lost positions. He's lost winning positions. You said it could have been worse. In some situations, that king was close to the edge of the board.
Exactly.
Maybe Hikaru would have won that rook versus king. Tied match going to game 2. Both players need a reset. But again, Levon Aronian has to be feeling very happy to save that one.
Well, let's refocus ourselves as we get into this second game here. First things first, as we're looking at this, it's a Queen's Gambit opening. There's been an exchange on d5, kind of this Carlsbad structure. And first thing I'm noticing, Eric, is that bishop on b4. Normally, you don't really want to play bishop b4 and take this knight because you're not really achieving anything. So if the bishop gets attacked maybe by a3, I would expect it to retreat, bishop d6 or bishop e7. It's a little bit different than the Nimzo, where you bring that bishop out normally to take the knight.
Yeah, here the bishop on b4, in those structures, as you mentioned, you don't want to take. Sometimes you use the pin to bring your own knight as black to e4, but look at white's setup. There's a knight on g3, so knight e4. First of all, there's a pin. It's not really playable. But as you mentioned, I don't think there's going to be any bishop takes c3 in these structures. It's a bit of a different position. I'm not fully aware of all the intricacies here. It feels like one of white's ideas, when you bring the knight to g3 and you chase that bishop, you're indicating that you want to maybe attack the light squared bishop on g4. For example, if black played bishop g6 instead of bishop g4, the move h4 might have been played to play h5 next. Bishop g4 keeps things in the air because if white plays f3, I'm dropping my bishop back to e6, and I'm saying by playing f3, you've weakened the e3 square. I'll take that.
Exactly. One of the things this knight on g3 does is, you mentioned, it takes control of the e4 square. So a usual way that black frees himself in the Queen's Gambit is by playing knight e4, offering a lot of trades. Maybe the bishop comes back to e7, knight e4. That's not going to be possible here. So instead, we've got a position where there's a bishop on g4, but it's not pinning anything. There are moves like h3, f3 next. The question is now to the dark square bishop. If a3 happens, the bishop can retreat and put the question to the white queen. I really like this position right now for white. Queen's gambit. I have to say the knight on g3 against this bishop on g4 is working out nicely.
Yeah, I'm looking at plans here. They both need to clarify things. We know that black is probably dropping that bishop back.
Yeah, back to the e6
And
square.
maybe that's
now
why we
even
see
further.
h6, because now when there's no dark square bishop for white, you know you can safely tuck your bishop into d6. There were some positions where after h6, white would play bishop f4, like a London bishop. Here, that's not the case. Hikaru's going for a simple plan. I'd like to remove the light squared bishops and maybe utilize that f5 square for my knight on g3.
Yeah, and the bishop back to d6, all of a sudden, we're in this position where white's been forced to play bishop takes f6. The bishop pair is probably going to disappear, but if black can play bishop takes on g3, I think the structure will also favor Levon. Maybe even queen takes b3 as well, Eric. So there could be double g pawns, double b pawns, and Levon's structure is simple and it's good.
Yeah, Levon is really good at playing kind of like Raygosin positions. He's been playing it throughout the tournament. After queen c2, there's some calculation required. Does b2 hang in any line? Bishop takes f5, queen takes f5, queen takes b2. Maybe that's too risky?
That's a question. And I guess after that, I'm looking at castling, but now that I'm looking at the queen on f5, like, why is that not just very good for black? Maybe queen e5 check?
You throw in the check and then you castle, but I'm not convinced. This is a critical line.
He called it out immediately, Eric. That's a lot of confidence. Just take that pawn and move the king.
Well, you know what I'm looking at him on? There's limited material. Even if black plays king f8, we have it on the board. Is there enough material to justify losing a full pawn? I want to play queen a3 and queen e7.
Exactly.
And it's now the game has changed completely. Hikaru is down a pawn. He needs to prove compensation, which means attack that king, probably build the center at some point with f3 and e4. But yeah, it's a position that forces his hand.
Exactly.
You can't afford to go to an endgame down a full pawn here.
No, and queen c7, you can bring the queen back to e7. If you try to play for e4, there's also rook e8 in the position. I think you just want to play either rook e8 or queen e7, but something feels good about bringing the queen back into the game with queen e7 and looking for that queen trade. I mean, you have that extra pawn.
Queen e7 I want to play, but at least I know Hikaru's preparing rook b1. It's not that simple. There's issues for black to resolve. If I'm in Levon's shoes, I need to stabilize. How do I stabilize? I have to bring my pieces out. On a good day, I need to get the move in g6 and king g7 and connect my rooks. Hikaru wants to prevent that. So if the queen gets harassed, I'm placing my queen maybe on f5, maybe on f4. I need to make it hard to play g6 and king g7.
Yeah, I'm expecting queen e7 now. It works a little bit better than before, and the queen is probably going to go to a5. And then the question is, do you defend a7 by playing pawn to b6 or pawn to a6? If you play a6, all of a sudden, it feels like I can generate a lot of pressure. Rook b1, rook b2, knight a4 to c5. Eric, that could actually work out well for Hikaru.
You're right. But if you play b6 to defend it, then the c6 pawn is weak. So then the question is, maybe Levon decides to give back a pawn to bring his king out.
Yeah, I certainly think he may consider giving up that a pawn, right? Queen a5, just leave it be. There is this idea of playing h5. I know it's maybe a long ways away for Levon, but we've seen this doubled pawn structure before in front of the king. So maybe you go h5, h4 here. I'm surprised by b6, though.
I wanted to play that move with the queen on a5. Here, this is now shifting over where Hikaru has compensation in the form of the initiative. He can now double rooks on the c file, move the knight out of the way, and I see 3 attackers on c6. I don't see how black gets
I'm not so sure about this. Yeah, the king has to spend a couple moves, g6, king g7, then the rook from h8 can come out. That's 3 moves. White only needs rook c1, in fact, can make a threat immediately by moving the knight. Knight to e2. I mean, even knight b5 is available, but knight e2 seems simple, followed by rook c1.
The good news for Levon is he's up a pawn. If he does lose c6 by force, material is even. Knight b5, a more aggressive way of playing.
He did play it. Now, this move is definitely looking for a fight here because you're attacking the a7 pawn, but then you could turn that into also the c6 pawn. So if you're not careful as Levon, you can go from up a pawn to down a pawn in just a couple of moves here. a5, Eric, that does defend a7, and if we're being honest here, where are the threats? Only to a7 at the moment. So a5 covers it, and then rook f to c1, queen d7. Are we playing this position?
I think that pawn's eventually falling, so I'm not really sure. I think Hikaru is doing well again. I'm not saying he's better, but to me, he has enough compensation for the pawn. It is 10-minute chess, so Levon doesn't have enough time to just keep dwelling, like keep thinking, how can I defend a7 and c6? At some point, he might just be like, you know what, I'm spending too much time on this.
Yep.
I'm going to give the pawn up and try to get my king on g7.
But
I need the rook on
I would
h8.
have wanted him to do that before. Now it feels like because he's committed b6, he's not at risk of just losing a pawn. He can lose two. There's too many weaknesses. So I don't think you can just go and play g6, king g7, because I'm looking at losing the c and the a pawn at the moment.
Yeah, that's the issue with moves like a5. If you end up losing the c6 pawn after playing a move like a5, by playing a5, you've weakened the b5 square. That knight on b5 can stay there forever.
Yep.
White can move the queen out of the way, support the knight on b5 with a4, and all of a sudden, white will be in control of the c file, and that's the main file in the game.
Exactly. This knight b5 move from Hikaru, have to say, like, his eye for being resourceful. Look at that, the head bob, right? He is feeling his position. He knows his opponent is uncomfortable. This has paid off for Hikaru because it is a very quick match here. 10 minutes, no increment, and Hikaru's got the plan. He knows exactly what his next moves are going to be. He also knows that if he wins a pawn, another one might not be far off.
As I said in the previous match, the key to this match is the speed. I was told that Hikaru should be the favorite because he's faster. By chess form, Levon is playing fantastic chess, but he was slower in that first game, pulled off the draw. Here, he's down a minute and a half. He can't continue at this pace, or the initiative will be too strong later on.
Yep, so we see g6. This makes sense. I think in hindsight, he would have preferred to do this instead of playing b6 at all, because this knight b5 move was very strong. Queen takes a7. You can't touch the knight on b5 because the rook is still hanging. That's because black's king is not traditionally castled. So queen a7, if you take it, Eric, we've been talking about winning 2 pawns this entire time. I think it's about to happen.
And if you play, I don't know, a move like queen b4, maybe I can play rook takes c6 there. I have queen a8 check.
Yep.
The tactics start to flow. Levon was up a pawn, and now we're looking at positions where he might be down a pawn and down a couple minutes on the clock.
Yeah,
Can
and
he salvage this?
If you play h5 or some other move, you're also threatening queen takes c7, knight a7, hitting the rook on c8, hitting the pawn on c6. Of course, there's also rook f to c1. This looks like not only an advantage on the clock, but Hikaru is very comfortable. He might even just be better.
I think he is better. The base of the pawns has been broken. Will rook take c6 be played? Does it win a pawn? Yes. Maybe Levon can play king g7. Hikaru's looking for something better. You can do queen takes b6.
Right.
That c6 pawn is still pinned. He's sitting up straight right now, looking for a punishing move. He knows Levon is uncomfortable. Look at that clock. Look at that queen side. The initiative is paid off by Hikaru. How much can he extract?
Absolutely. King g7 wants to be the next move played. This is a very critical moment because he's trying to extract the maximum from his advantage. The knight on b5 cannot really, I mean, you can play moves like knight c7, but Eric, you got to be sure about knight c7 because you're putting your knight behind enemy lines. It does mean that the c6 pawn is hanging, and maybe king g7, there's knight e6.
Yeah, there's 2 approaches here. What you mentioned, we want to disrupt black's king from getting in g7, or win as many pawns as possible. Queen b7 might be both. Hikaru's trying to make life as uncomfortable for Levon. Don't allow that king into the game. Then black is playing down the rook on h8.
I was going to ask if he's planning to take on c6 there, but it's kind of a combination of moves. Knight c7 played now. He sees knight e6 as a possibility. The c6 pawn is completely hanging. If you try to defend it with c5, I mean, we can start taking things. Not only is there knight e6, but pawns are loose here.
Pawns are very loose, and if you allow white to take on c6, the rook on f1 swings behind, and all the tactics favor white.
Yeah, knight e6 is a really, really crushing move here.
Rook b8,
wins on the
knight
spot.
e6.
Yeah, wins on the spot. If the king goes to h7, you just take on f7. If the king goes to g8, the rooks are not protecting each other. It forced a move from Levon to stop knight e6. Now it must be time to collect. Rook takes c6, rook c1 coming. The b6 pawn is also loose. Unless there's a pin, a really unpleasant pin on this knight on c7, Eric, Hikaru has an amazing position.
Everything is loose. d5 is loose. b6 is loose. You just can't fall for some tactics, some pin on the c-file. Rook b8, good move by Levon. He has to recognize he's behind on the clock significantly. Can't keep playing at the pace that he's at.
Yeah. And another idea for Levon, if you start to think, what can black do? I'm looking at knight g4, Eric, queen g5, and queen h5. Very unpleasant to deal with queen h2. The obvious question is, does he have time to do that with all the pressure that he's facing? I'm thinking if queen to a6, we might have more time for something like that. Knight to g4, or maybe h5, h4. There are still some ideas for Levon as Hikaru maybe completely abandons that king side.
Queen a7 instead of queen a6 reintroduces knight e6 as a move. I like it. And as you mentioned, Levon could consider that, but with 2.5 minutes on the clock, it's such a tough task. You have two thoughts. Defending, do you really have time to think about attacking? It's a hard pivot in your head.
He's always had this knight e6. He could have played it on the last move, but there's a nice resource. Queen captures e6 with the queen hanging. That's why it wasn't played on the previous move, and it is a threat now. Hence, king to h7. Wants to just remove the king from the checking square, but this blocks the h-file. It's obviously not a move you want to do, but played out of necessity.
I'd like to play rook fc1 here. In the future, if I get worried about my king, I might have to play queen a4 and bring the queen back, maybe on f3. I'm looking at queen a7, queen a4, queen d1, queen f3. I know that's long term, but it's only if it gets a little hairy around the king side. But Hikaru needs to find a way to break through here.
Yeah, I like rook c1. I mean, rook c1, queen a4 works nicely because the queen comes back to d1 while the rooks are already doubled. The knight on c7 can always retreat to b5. And I don't think that black can get things going quick enough, right? Knight g4, queen g5, there's just no time to do that, and your king is on h7, which means f7 is a loose pawn.
f7 is a loose pawn, and d5 is a loose pawn. So maybe white brings the queen back to a square like a4, even to b3, and all of a sudden you're eyeballing d5, and after you eyeball d5, you'll be hitting f7.
Yep, this, look at the time, right? We've talked about it before. It's here once again. Hikaru Nakamura has another opportunity to use the board and the clock. I really like the idea of that queen a4, Eric, and it has been played. The knight is secure on c7.
Secure on a7. The c6 rook is really well defended, and we're looking at threats like knight takes d5. Knight takes d5 is in the air. That would be a second pawn for Nakamura.
Yep. Knight takes d5. I mean, there's just nothing you can really do about this. If you take on c6, the queen can capture back. You can also build that up with queen b5 or queen b3.
Oh,
we mentioned knight
d5.
I think it's just playable. Knight takes d5 if you capture with the knight. The rook on c8 hangs. Knight takes d5 if you take on c6. You can just recapture.
It looks good to me.
Right? You're not taking on e7. Instead, you're recapturing on c6. You don't want a situation, Eric, where you allow rook takes c6, rook takes c1, and knight g4. That could lead to checkmate.
Hikaru sees that tactic. He's just checking if there's something better. He's in full control here. Do you want to go up 2 pawns? He says yes. Knight takes d5. The queen comes in. White is up 2 pawns. Hikaru's up almost 1.5 minutes. And we're looking at endgames. Like even queen e5 check is probably just a winning endgame. But he might want more. He might want to make life a little harder for Levon.
Well, he's thinking back to that last game maybe. Do you want to immediately commit to that flag? I think he's probably going to keep the game going a little bit, but it's nice to point out queen e5 followed by f4. It is winning. And it's a little easier now, Eric. He will play queen e5. If the rook can capture back, he's got those 2 pawns in the middle. That is something.
But you're right. Why trade now when you can get your opponent to think more? And a move like rook c5, Levon is spending very valuable seconds.
Yes, he is.
Calculating things out. He doesn't want to end up in a totally lost position. He just spent 10, 15 seconds on b4. That's not going to cut it. Queen c4, fantastic move. Preparing rook c7, still watching over the b4 pawn, and maybe d5. At some moment, you're looking to play rook c7, maybe use the d5 pawn, start kicking black backwards, and generating threats on the king side.
Yeah, I like the move d5. You follow it with queen d4. He has a lot of ways he can play this. A queen endgame, for example, is, I mean, you can play that position forever. Queen c5, first move that I would consider here.
Queen c5, queen d5. Queen d5 covers a2, hits f7. Queen c5 first, always good to throw. Why not throw those moves in?
Yeah.
It takes time off the clock. Hikaru has many win conditions here.
d5, queen d4, Eric, and the queen just kind of sits pretty, covering absolutely everything. I would play queen d4 right now, get the queen behind the pawn. Yes, there's a check or two that can be thrown in, but d6 plus queen d4, he's going to push that pawn all the way. The 100% winning on the board, Eric, and he also has tons of extra time. This surely is a win for Hikaru.
The only counterplay typically in these positions is a perpetual. There's no perpetual. Levon Aronian resigns. Hikaru takes the lead. Game 2 of this quarterfinal match.
Hikaru Nakamura and Team Falcons has won. There is a little bit of a break for the players as Hikaru, you can see, going backstage there, collecting his thoughts. He has to be feeling good, even though, you know, you can look back on game number 1 and say, wow, what an opportunity missed by Hikaru for the flag. Still, he came right back in game 2. He played the same way. He was always dominating. Yes, it looked, you know, maybe like Levon was going to come back, take that pawn, and make something happen in that middle game, Eric, but Hikaru was on top of that game the entire way. I mean, he sacked that pawn. He made it look like a good sacrifice.
Yeah, Hikaru made it look like a sacrifice, and it felt like that was a game where Levon was indecisive. He picks up the pawn, but after picking up the pawn, usually the task is simple. You try to hold on to that extra pawn, or you give it up to catch up in development. It looks like he couldn't decide which, and in the end, he picked the worst choice. He ended up losing the pawns and not getting development, and Hikaru, with that initiative and his, you know, skill, wasn't close.
No, it wasn't close. Hikaru Nakamura is leading 1.5 to half, but as the players take their break, we will take ours, but stick with us. Game number 3 between Hikaru Nakamura and Levon Aronian is coming up right after this break.
If my brain completely froze, colder I go. Colder I go. So still, calm like the waters at the sea. Silence as if to say my mind's actually at peace to some degree. Some degree. If time's supposed to heal, why do I feel like I've been here for hours? The pain that's in my throat continues to grow. They say it'll get better. How can they know?
Level up your gaming experience with over 8 billion playlists, only on Spotify, the official audio streaming partner for the 2025 Esports World Cup.
There's a lot of pressure on my shoulders to make my mom and dad proud.
It's the best feeling watching him live out his dream.
It's this pressure that you have on you that if you don't win, you lose your job.
Kita udah nunjukin kalau ladies itu juga tetap bisa bersaing di scene cowok.
No big deal, just the hopes and dreams of thousands of supporters riding on one kid's split-second decisions and lightning-fast hands.
You can do this. I believe in each and every one of you, but the mission's not done.
You want to make a run at the title, you have to run a gauntlet of competition.
Competing at this level comes with a lot of sacrifice.
The thing is about these top teams, it's win or bust.
For some of these players, that's their life.
Welcome to the Esports World Cup. This is the Super Bowl, the World Cup, and the Olympics, all rolled into one event for the first time ever.
We are coming for you.
If you're betting against me, that's going to wake me up and get me to playing best I can.
I fucking got the shit. You heard that? Nothing is granted. Everything is earned.
Is your job on the line?
I believe it's on the line, as it should be.
Welcome back, everyone. Chess at the Esports World Cup continues. And Eric, talk about the atmosphere in here. We're sharing the stage with some other games, Overwatch, but it's electric. It's loud. The people can hear it. I love the atmosphere.
Yeah, you hear the noise. People have something to lose everywhere. I mean, there's intense matches to our left, to our right, and just in front of us. I mean, just this last match, Hikaru showing his level.
Yeah, he's certainly delivering, doing it in a way that people know him for. Right, he's always using that clock as an advantage, but it doesn't mean that every game of his is like that first game where he's going pure flag mode. In the second game, he just got it done on the board with great calculation and tactical play.
Yeah, I think Hikaru's played a bit shaky this tournament so far, but that last game, once he had his opportunities, very, very high level. If he maintains that, Levon will have a very difficult time catching up. That was vintage Hikaru.
Yep, and we talk about this best of 4 match, Eric. It means that we are only a win away for Hikaru Nakamura from closing out this match. The players are repeating their game so far. A4, we have the Berlin, but a different move this time, Hikaru Nakamura. I wonder if he checked something just in that small break there, Eric, because we didn't see the knight on E7 staying there, and now a bit of a different setup with bishop E6 and rook D8.
Well, speaking about checking something, Levon stayed at his computer during the break, and he was checking something on that computer. Hikaru, he left. Maybe he has some help outside. Not sure, but Levon was definitely checking lines before playing this.
Makes sense. You don't want to just go in and play the exact same way. Levon, he's also playing this clearly, Eric, for a win, right? He's doing it because he has some idea. He must have liked the position that he got in that first game, and for good reason, but it kind of got away from him. In this match situation, the problem is if you don't win this, right, maybe you make a draw, it turns into a Hikaru Nakamura 2-1 lead, and then Hikaru will have the white pieces in the last game. Is that a situation you want to be in as Levon Aronian?
Definitely not. And we saw in the first game, Levon played this line. Hikaru did get his chances. He gets his chances no matter what color you play against him. But for sure, you want to use your white pieces. Levon is a very confident, ambitious player. He's going for everything in this game.
Yeah, H6 played, taking control of that crucial G5 square. Now this rook on A4, a little bit peculiar, but it does prevent the bishop on F8 from developing to the B4 square. And if bishop C5, maybe you can continue, knight E4 or pawn to B4. The bishop is kind of relegated to that E7 square. The problem with maybe a bishop on the E7 square is perhaps that's a square your knight wants to use. So the rook on A4 is doing a little bit more than you might think.
Yeah, I have to say I'm really not used to this type of setup for white, but that's rapid chess. You can play lines, try things that your opponent won't have the right amount of time to properly punish or equalize here. Levon is banking on that, but you're mentioning some ideas. Maybe G4 in some position, because when you play rook A4, you take away the B4 square, you take away the D4 square, because Hikaru played an early rook D8. There's many positions where he was looking to play knight F5, knight D4, more exchanges. Now that's not in play. At the same time, white has invested time on the side, playing A4, A5, rook A4. That's 3 moves on the queen side that you don't typically see in a Berlin. So general chess understanding says if your opponent plays on the flank, you play in the middle of the board.
Exactly right. Bishop E7 played, meeting the move G4 with knight H4, the only move available, but a standard move here. I wonder, is Levon going to stay solid. He sometimes went for the move h3, just slow moving. I'm really wondering what he's got. What's his big idea in this opening, Eric? Because so far, I have to say, from Hikaru's perspective, he has to be fairly satisfied. That first game did not go that well out of the opening, but Hikaru was so resourceful. He made it look like he was fine the entire time. I think Hikaru is pretty comfortable so far handling Levon's unorthodox a4, a5, and rook a4 idea.
I think so, but then I also understand Levon's idea. He might not have a big idea. His idea is simple. Avoid typical Berlin positions and avoid easy exchanges. Rook a4 takes away knight h4. Knight a4 is a standard move in the Berlin, so Levon just wants a new position with as many pieces on the board as possible. Because, yeah, we're looking at a position where the queens are off the board. You can't afford that many exchanges. Rook a4 at least put it, dampen that. Now b5, though, that's a bit more forceful than what we've seen.
It certainly is, and I think that this is exactly what Levon wants to see. Maybe he just put Hikaru in a position where he said, okay, I'm not going to do anything, and it's kind of caused Hikaru to lash out. b5, it does allow maybe rook a7, one of the first moves that comes to mind, hitting the c pawn. It should need to be defended, maybe rook c8, and then you're taking pieces away from the middle of the board. g4 is probably coming soon.
Rook a7, I don't think Hikaru is too worried about playing rook d7 or rook c8. My question is, how does white optimize their pieces? Currently, the pieces are not optimized. The knight on f3 doesn't have a square. The knight on c3, it can't go to b5. It can't place itself on d5. It can go to e4, but even when it goes to e4, the next moves, f6, c5, g5, they're all covered. The Berlin is a very tough defense to break through. I'm really wondering where Levon is going to place the pieces. What's one idea? The knight on c3 goes to e2, and it finds a home on f4.
Knight e2 to f4. There's also this idea of playing g4, and if knight h4, which of course has to be played, takes, eventually you want to just build up a position where you play f4 and f5. It can't happen right now, but for example, bishop e3, maybe bringing the rook from e1, perhaps over to a1, rook a7, f4.
I see a position where the rook on a4 is useful. If black plays h5, which is sometimes played to open up the h-file, target those pawns, I have pawn to g5, and the rook on a4 can just capture that bishop on h4 next move.
I like that variation. Yeah, h5, g5. You'd almost never expect a rook on a4 to play a role like that, but if it discourages h5, then you start to think, what's the next move for Hikaru? Because in the Berlin, you're not usually castling. Right, your king is in the center. It is an endgame, so you're not looking to necessarily play castle because the king would be far away from the action.
Bishop b7, that's smart.
Yeah, he wants to play h5 and doesn't want to deal with g5. I wouldn't be surprised to see the h5 move now. Of course, bishop d5 is available because the knight moved, but what is it accomplishing? You could play f3 and then just attack the bishop on the next move with c4 or knight f4.
Yeah, h5 is playable, and it's unclear who that favors. Yes, there's positions where black plays h5 and takes on g4 and has the h-file, but there's limited material on the board. Can black actually use that h-file effectively?
Yeah, it just feels like that's the kind of move that you play if they're not really sure what to do. On the queen side, I'm used to seeing a move like c5, pawn to c5, maybe even the black king could come out, king d7, king c6, or the bishop, bishop d5 check, and bishop back to c6. I'm used to seeing the pawns on the queen side kind of get to the dark squares because, white wants to play bishop e3, maybe knight d4, and the pawns b6 and c5 deal with that nicely.
I like pawn to c5, and I like bringing the king out because the question is black castling? Likely not. The king is good in the center, normally speaking. c5, bring the king to c6. At the end of the day, the Berlin, it's defined. Black has the bishop pair, white doesn't, and black's good bishop is the light squared bishop. I'm looking for a home, and here's the home. It's on c6.
Yeah, bishop d7 with tempo coming to c6. I imagine we'll see rook to a7 here because bishop c6 is a good-looking move, and I don't really understand rook anywhere else. Like rook to a1 doesn't make sense. Of course, put pressure on c7. The question is f3, king g3. Both moves look pretty good, but maybe king g3 comes with a big risk of maybe the h-file opening.
King g3 or f3, I mean, I just want to say, I think Levon, though, has a push here. In the Berlin, as white, you want to free up the e-file. When the bishop transfers, black's bishop is on c6. It's not on e6 anymore. White has a knight on f4, rook on e1. The e6 move is critical to look at because that could make life very uncomfortable for black on the e-file. And also, if you ever kick away the knight, in some positions it can even hop over to h5. If black plays something forceful like g5, I can play knight h5. I have squares and I have breaks. Maybe then I play king g3, f4. But this is a dynamic position for Berlin, which is what Levon wants.
Yeah, and you're talking about, you know, king d7 to guard the c7 pawn. e6 comes with check then. The knight can recapture. Otherwise, you have to defend passively. Rook to c8. That's not the way that you want to play this Berlin. So definitely an achievement here for Levon Aronian, who's just played f3. The question's back on Hikaru, and he's spending time here. You know, similar to Nepomniachtchi, when he's spending time, it really means that he doesn't like his position or there is something that needs to be figured out.
There is. You want, as black, to be able to play rook a8 and contest that rook, but there's no time to play king d7. Bishop h4.
Okay, I wonder, is he going aggressive with rook d1, or is this just
I just don't see the
temporary
follow.
move?
Rook d1, I can block. Bishop b5.
Okay, I mean, rook d2 looks to be the move that makes the most sense here. And, you know, if you trade the rook on d2, I feel like Levon can actually be very happy with that.
Yeah, he still has to solve the c7 problem. But if rook d2, when we trade everything, is there king d7? Or does knight d5 hurt? So rook d2, bishop takes d2, king d7. There might be this knight d5 move, coordinating on that c7 square, and also threatening even knight takes b6.
Yeah, takes on d2, bishop takes d2. There's also bishop back to d8 to hold that c7 pawn, but clearly looking at that position,
Well,
I mean, knight d5 anyway, and king d7, there's knight takes on b6.
Hikaru has problems to solve, and that's why he's almost 2 minutes behind on the clock. His rook on h8 isn't in the game. Look at white's pieces. That knight on f4 wants to swing over to d5.
I wonder if there's an idea of knight d5, king c6, where you allow knight takes c7, and perhaps
what a find.
This move is much better.
Oh my goodness, Amon. e6, if you take, there's knight g6. Look at that fork. You were completely right about Hikaru's idea. He was only looking at knight d5 and this e6 move, exclamation mark, because now where do you place your king? You can't take on e6 because of knight g6, but wherever you put your king, it's either hanging c7 or it's hanging f7.
Exactly. This move is unbelievable from Levon Aronian. He is up on time here, 2 minutes. He's just played e6. It can't be taken. You can see visible frustration. This is not what Hikaru was counting on. I think he calculated a good line against knight d5, but he didn't anticipate that e6 could be played. The positioning of the bishop on h4 and the rook on h8 allow knight g6. So, Eric, if you can't take this, I mean, also after I take on f7, I'm threatening knight g6 anyway.
You're threatening knight g6 and there's no way to stop it. We might be just looking at a completely lost position.
Oh my goodness.
I don't see a good move here. If you lose c7, I mean, that rook's going to take everything, and you can still not take on e6 because of this knight g6. The pieces for white are placed perfectly to pull this move off. And I said, in the Berlin, the main break is the e6 move. Here, flows beautifully.
It might be completely lost, but there is a really deep engine idea, Eric. Taking on e6, knight g6, rook to g8. And trapping the knight on h4 with g5. I think that was the only idea. It's super tough to find. I don't even know how you even see something like that not played, and he's actually just going to resign that game, Eric. Levon Aronian wins, and we have a tied match.
Incredible. Levon continued playing against the Berlin. I look at the field of players here, 16 players, very few of them would use the white side of the Berlin endgame to try to equalize. Levon did it, he pulled it off, he posed enough problems for Hikaru. Hikaru, he's an active player. The one time he was almost getting his pieces out, Levon found such an important move, e6.
Yeah, that e6 move, it caught us all off guard. In fact, it was almost like a decoy, the move knight d5, because we were all focused on it. Probably Hikaru as well calculated a good variation to refute it, but didn't realize that e6 with that knight g6 move, there's really no coming back from that. That was a one-move KO.
It was. I mean, set up perfectly. Hikaru played bishop h4. During the game, this tactic didn't work so much, but as soon as that bishop shifted to h4, the geometry, Levon noticed. He's been playing against the Berlin, he's played the Berlin, he's a veteran, he noticed that g6 spot is really weak, and there's no way to deal with this knight g6 fork when there's a bishop on h4 and a rook on h8. What a comeback. We have a tied match. heading into game 4. And once again, it's so easy to underestimate Levon Aronian because he's not typically one of the best players in this format. He hasn't played as much online. Hikaru is a household name, one of the favorites here. But look at that. That is just a crushing defeat of the Berlin defense.
It is, and it's shocking that you mentioned it. Like, Levon using the Berlin, going into it willingly in a game. It wasn't must win, but I think we'd agree a draw, handing Hikaru the white pieces in game number 4, that did not seem like a viable option. So he was effectively playing it for a win, and that was his weapon of choice. There's not many players that would do that, and there's not many players that could do it like Levon and actually pull it off.
And when you're in Hikaru's situation there, you're up a point. You want your opponent to work for it. Sometimes you lose a game, they played perfectly, they won a close game. That game, he didn't manage to pose any issues for Levon. He made it too easy to come back in the match. He's got to fully reset here heading into game 4.
Yeah, game 4, white pieces, Hikaru Nakamura. It is tied right now, 1.5, 1.5. Levon Aronian from Team Reject. He made that comeback. And now, if it works out to be a draw here, Eric, we will go to Armageddon. But I think this opening will tell us, you know, what's the mindset of these players right now. One thing I'll say about Hikaru is that he seems to be, listening to his interviews, he seems to be understanding the Armageddon format quite well and how it applies to him. So I will say I don't think he's that afraid of going into Armageddon.
He's had a career of like speed chess and being at the top of the world, high stakes matches. So I don't think nerves or those situations phase him. I think you're right. Any of these formats, Armageddon, he's used to it. He's been playing against, you know, Magnus Carlsen every year, match after match, tournaments like the Speed Chess Championships. He can handle all the situations. At the same time, he's got to once again reset and think about, dude, Levon is a real threat in this format, and he can't get away with some of those moves.
Yeah, you know, we talk about Armageddons. Levon also making it through the last chance qualifier certainly had to play his fair share. Getting into the game at the moment, we see this move queen to c6. Now, Levon has taken it upon himself to make that extra effort to play bishop a6. It's offside. It actually brings the knight offside, but it trades Hikaru's best piece on the board, best minor piece on the board. So the rest of the position, there's only a queen for Hikaru, but, you know, Levon has traded, say, okay, I'll get rid of your bishop pair, but I will, you know, put my knight offside, kind of sacrifice a little bit of the position.
Yeah, Black knows the knight's offside. It's going to take time to bring it back. But as you mentioned, there's limited material on the board, so Black's banking on White not having the development to punish that. And we see that on the board. The knight on g1, the bishop on c1, they haven't developed yet. So all Hikaru has to show right now is the queen on c6.
Right.
It all depends. Can he keep it there? What does the queen do? It freezes that c7 pawn, takes away Black's ability to open up and take advantage of the slow development. All comes down to that queen on c6 here.
Now, queen c8 is kind of a strange move. I was actually expecting perhaps the move queen to d7, and then I thought, okay, maybe queen d7, you know, he
it's
could,
ambitious.
He could trade. Yeah, this is
queen
an ambitious
c8's ambitious.
move.
It's not saying trade the queens. Maybe you are too behind on development, and I want to play this for Black, and I want to keep the queens on. If you think someone's underdeveloped, trading the queens probably makes their task easier because it's harder to checkmate when the queens are off.
And rook d8, that move as well. Rook d6 perhaps, because I was thinking to myself, what's Black's next move, right? You can't move the knight on a6 at all. b8, c5, b4 off limits. And what's your next move with the queen? Queen e6, well, that's another queen trade, maybe queen d7. So this move makes more sense. Rook to d8, maybe rook to d6. He is keeping the queens on the board after all.
He's dislodged the queen, and rook d6, there's certain positions. If White queenside castles, Black's rook on d6 might swing over to g6 or somewhere on the 6th rank.
Yep.
And there's a queen on c8. Maybe the queen joins the party on g4. So this is a move Black can consider playing c5, just playing in the center, standard chess. But there might be some utility with that rook on the 6th rank.
And you mentioned, Eric, that Levon Aronian has made a career out of winning with the black pieces. So don't think this is some situation where Hikaru's playing with White, only Hikaru can win this match. Look at the way that Levon is playing. Knight e4. I mean, Eric, I would have second thoughts about castling here, knowing that rook g6 and either queen g4 or queen h3 are happening next, coupled with knight g5. That's, you know, you definitely have to think about that.
I definitely have to think about that. Fortunately for Hikaru, he put his knight on e2, not f3. So the knight on e2 can play defense. It can go to f4. It can also go to g3 if it really needs to cover up the g file. f4, probably the key square because
Exactly.
it plays defense and offense, targeting D5, defending G2. And now we have some clarity in the center, taking on C5. Levon takes back with a knight.
Interesting.
That's a bit of a concession,
it allows
right?
knight d4. Knight d4 could have been played on the last move. That covers the b3 square. And there's an isolated pawn on d5. I think that Hikaru has done a really good job. While it may have optically looked like Black's pieces were coordinating, he said, I'm not phased, I'm not spooked. The knight on a6 is out of the game. And in order to bring it into the game on c5, you've given up the d4 square. There's a weak pawn on d5. This looks like a slow, small but manageable push for Hikaru Nakamura.
It does, and I think we can always look at the clocks. When Hikaru was spending a lot of time early on, he's probably not too comfortable. Here, even though he's behind in development, he was playing quickly. Now he's achieved the castle, and as you mentioned, he can blockade that pawn. On the other hand, Levon has his knight on e6. In this structure, this is a well-known structure in the Nimzo Indian. When Black gets her knight on e6, doubles up on the d-file, generally speaking, White does not have enough to win that. It's not even considered much of an advantage at all. At the same time, this is no increment chess, so you can play on and on and on, but I don't think Levon is uncomfortable either.
No, the d-pawn can be defended, so it's not that Hikaru can just walk up and win it, but it really revolves around maybe the d4 move. Are we going to see that move happen? The move knight g3 indicates knight f5. Right, knight f5 hits the rook, also brings the knight back to the d4 square. And the other thing it does is it allows that queen on d2 to transfer to the f2 square, and then you can double the rooks on the d-file. Because right now there's one piece that's not participating. It's the rook on f1. So I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe knight f5, queen f2, knight back to d4.
Definitely, and that's one of the reasons why the knight on e6 is pretty well placed. It targets d4, but also defends g7, because if it wasn't, White would look to play maybe queen f2, queen g3, try to provoke weaknesses around Black's king. So far, Levon isn't giving Hikaru much. The game revolves around this isolated pawn on d5.
And although you could say that the e3 pawn is just as weak, and Levon could target it on the e-file, there's an extra piece in the position that Black does not have, which is the king. At some point, White can play king f2 to defend that pawn. And wow, knight h6, knight g4. This is a much different way of playing this position because you're no longer controlling d4. And to be honest, Eric, I'm surprised by this decision not to just retreat safely knight d4.
He baited Hikaru. This looks like it weakens the dark squares around Black's king. It's true. But how does Hikaru take advantage of that? If you give Black a couple of moves, maybe I play d4. But on the other hand, I might even play a move like queen e7, play h5, and place my queen on f6 and say, my king is safe. He's baiting the knight to go to a worse square.
f6 is surprising. I thought that moves like queen c3, you always had d4.
f6.
This is surprising.
We have to look at e4, allowing queen h6.
Yep.
What did Levon plan against this? Because this is the obvious move.
Well, h5 on the previous move was the one to consider. Has he just completely missed?
I don't understand here, Amon.
What's occurring? He's got his
Queen
hand on his head.
Check. You can't go king back.
It's over.
If you go king h8, you take on f6. I don't see a move.
f6 hits the queen, the rook, the h7 pawn. Levon had his hand on his head like he completely missed it, and you can see just the body language. We can take the board off the screen, and you know who is winning.
Wow. There's
that's
no
a one-mover.
Safety for the king.
That's a one-mover. Levon Aronian cannot believe that he just missed it. You know what? e4. Did he see queen h6? What did he think was the intention after e4? I think he expected queen c3, Eric. It's possible he didn't see that diagonal opening up. He was tunnel vision on the center, maybe expected only queen c3 because I don't have another explanation.
Now Levon needs to think, what's the best way to play to keep myself in the game? He's facing a lost position, but can he come up with some counterplay? Sacrifice his queen for a rook and a knight. Do you put your king on h8 here? And after knight takes f6, you can't even play rook takes d1 because queen takes h7 is checkmate.
I think you have to play king h8. King g8 walks into knight f6. End of story.
Yes.
King f7 walks into queen takes h7, knight h6. There's going to be a checkmate there with rook takes e4 or queen g8. So this is just pure frustration because king h8 should be on the board right now.
Yeah, Levon's just trying to stabilize his thoughts, but even if he does, we don't have a move here. King h8, knight takes f6. As you mentioned, king f7. I can take on h7 and even follow up with maybe knight h6 check, and the king gets chased to the middle of the board where it gets checkmated on the e-file.
Yep.
We're staring at a completely lost position with no counterplay. One of the worst blunders, Levon Aronian is being so consistent. this past month during the EWC, and here he's made an elementary blunder.
Yeah, and that is a game-costing blunder, a match-costing blunder. He will be eliminated because of it. King H8 is the only move that I can see here, but you can just see the frustration. Eric, from the mental perspective, it takes a while for you to even admit that, okay, I have to play a lost move. He's finally come to that realization.
Resignation,
and
Hikaru
wins. Wow, Team Falcons.
You see the players on camera. Levon is probably telling them, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I missed that. I thought you'd play this. And Hikaru has to be relieved. He didn't have to work as hard as he probably expected. Levon was such a tough opponent. But at the end of the day, we're all capable of making blunders. And it was terrible timing for Levon to make that blunder.
Terrible timing for Levon, who's had such a consistent, such a good event. And let's not forget, coming through the last chance qualifier and making it here. Such an impressive run. But we're talking about Hikaru Nakamura, the winner of this matchup. Eric, you mentioned it looked like it could have gone either way. Levon with an insane comeback to win against the Berlin. But in that final game, Hikaru just clutch when it matters, which is a trait that he's known for over the years.
Yeah, Hikaru, even when he loses a game, he's known as a player who can recover quickly. He's not someone, I lose a game, my confidence goes down, I need to stabilize, I need to make a draw. He recovers immediately. He scores that game 4 win, didn't need Armageddon. And the way Levon was playing, you know, wouldn't want to even take it to Armageddon. He won in the 4th game, makes it to the semifinals, and it shows he's been such a consistent player in his career. He's had bad games, he has blunders, but at the end of the day, he makes it to the key matches.
That's right, and he has advanced from the quarterfinals to the semifinals. That's a name that you expected to be there, but off a blunder like that from Levon Aronian, still shocking to us.
Bit of a Cinderella story, I think. Levon Aronian this past month, winning a super tournament, last chance qualifiers.
Exactly right, and we have James Canty down with Hikaru Nakamura, the winner of that match.
I'm here with Hikaru Nakamura. Congratulations on the win here. Can you take us through what happened in today's match here?
Yeah, it was an interesting match. The first game I was probably a little bit worse out of the opening, but then I turned it around. I was much better, and then we reached an end game where I should have won either on the board or the clock. I decided to go for the time situation, and unfortunately, I made this horrible move, king to d4, when Levon had 4 seconds, or else I would have won that game. I mean, if I don't play king d4, I win that game basically 100% of the time because he runs out of time. So it was really unfortunate, but luckily he wasn't able to checkmate me before he ran out of time. Second game, I think we're both a little bit on tilt kind of from the first game. I made a blunder, then Levon blundered, I got a win. Third game, Levon surprised me again with this opening idea, and I didn't really react correctly to it. So maybe it was okay, but it was a tough position to play. Ultimately, I just made this clean blunder. Levon found e6, and I just lost the game. And then fourth game was, I think, just a very boring game, but there was no risk, and so I was just happy to try and play chess. And I think both of us were probably riding some emotions, and Levon ultimately made this fatal mistake when he played pawn takes pawn on e4. He just blundered that after check, king h8, knight takes pawn, rook takes rook. There's a queen takes pawn checkmate, which I didn't see initially when I was calculating before he played f6, but I did spot it luckily, and so it was nice that Levon blundered and I got the win, and it's good to move on to the next round.
Absolutely, congratulations. Do you think the format being 10-0 without the increment actually benefits you being a very fast player, or no?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the format benefits me, but the fact of the matter is it's the Esports World Cup, and if we were playing with added time, I don't think it would be very exciting for the fans.
Last question here. Did you have any preparation going with Levon? Of course, he's been on fire, on a kind of a heater a little bit here, maybe a little bit of revenge from last in Las Vegas here. Did you have any plans for today?
No, I mean, you just come into the match and try to play your best. But I think there were multiple matches here. There was a match against Sindarov, which basically I felt like was the world writing things for a match that I never should have lost in February. And to be frank, this match against Levon in Vegas, I mean, I should have won that match probably 95% of the time, considering the position I had in that second game of the match. So it just feels like the world writing things, and I'm winning the match here, which actually I prefer winning here over winning in Vegas, so I'm pretty happy.
Congratulations, Hikaru. Back to you guys at the desk.
Huge congratulations to Hikaru Nakamura advancing to the semifinals, scoring him a win for Team Falcon over here. That was a crazy, crazy match.
Yeah, it certainly was. Very up and down. I mean, we saw in that very first game, it looked like Hikaru was about to win. He was winning on the board, threw away the win. We thought he was going to win on time. Hikaru said that as well. And then he hung his rook, and it looked like perhaps Levon could have even pulled off a win with like a couple seconds on the clock, but I think he just did not quite have the experience there. Then Hikaru won game number 2, game 3, Levon struck back, and in game 4, I thought like it was headed towards a draw. Maybe we're going to see Armageddon.
But this D takes E4.
It was a crazy blunder, yeah.
Oh, that's a tough one to blunder. I mean, Levon had such a strong fight starting from game 1. Sure, he wasn't necessarily better in game 1, but he certainly came back after Hikaru blundered. It was intense all around.
Yeah, and here we see the final moments of the match. We see it started out with a Queen C2 Nimzo. Very solid stuff, approximately even throughout the game. And yeah, at some point, Levon made that blunder. So here again, we see the opening. I think some pretty interesting play by Hikaru. And yeah, as we see, he did not get much out of the opening.
He did not get much out of the opening, but knowing Hikaru, he's always going to try to squeeze for that win. He's going to push for that win, as we saw in multiple of his games. And of course, I mean, E4, certainly White has a decent position, but not decisive, not even close to decisive. The eval bar has it at maybe +1 for White, but D takes E4, and it's instantly just game over for Black, because Queen to H6, followed by his own tactics, as he mentioned.
Yeah, no, D takes E4 just ended the game on the spot, so yeah. I mean, it can happen. The players are playing long days. Levon has been traveling from one place to another. Like we said, he won freestyle. He came here to play the last chance qualifier, made it through. So one game after another, I can understand that perhaps there was some fatigue kicking in.
For sure. It's also interesting to hear what Hikaru said during the interview with our host, James Canty, that he prefers winning here over than in freestyle.
Yeah, and I can understand. I mean, it's the Esports World Cup, right? I mean, it's the World Cup. I mean, yeah, obviously he likes winning here, so it's good to see him in the quarterfinals, and he might be up against Magnus. What do you make of that, James?
Yeah, of course, as he says from his own mouth, it's the El Clasico, of course, from people at home that are watching and know. We all look forward to seeing Hikaru versus Magnus there. It's just a classic matchup of big Titans there, right? So Clash of the Titans ordeal here. So would be nice to see. Maybe he is up for that, but let's see who the MVP is of today's match. That is Hikaru Nakamura, the daily MVP. You think that's deserved, Nemo?
I certainly don't think it came as a surprise to anybody. Hikaru did play a very, very intense 4-game match against Levon Aronian. Super intense stuff, and he triumphed at the end, unfortunately, with a blunder from Levon, but certainly at no fault, you know, Hikaru was just pushing through in every single game. Of course, it didn't go the best in the game 1, but it certainly did get him the win in game 4.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see him in the semifinals. He's always there. Like, Mang is there, Hikaru's there, and yeah, it's great to see these giants at the as the remaining few in this tournament.
Absolutely, as it feels good to see the players play, and we always learn something every time, and the format changes a lot of things here, guys, especially with no increment here. These players are used to playing with lots of increment, 2 seconds, or sometimes even more than that in the classical chess too as well, but it's exciting, but that's it from us. We are done, guys. How does that feel, Bach? Are you going to cry, Bach?
No, but it was an absolute pleasure being here at the Esports World Cup with you, Nemo. Sorry, with you, James, with you, Nemo. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor. So yeah, thanks to you guys.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Thank you very much, James. That was intense. And what a beautiful match between Hikaru and Levon to finish off our Stream B. It's going to be, I might shed a few tears.
Might shed a few tears myself, chat, of course, for you people watching at home. No, at the same time, this is it from us. We still have another stream on Stream A that will be going on further. So make sure you guys are watching that one. This is the Esports World Cup. We'll see you guys on the next one.